forward that to me.
I'll do that.
Okay. For everyone else, the sign-in sheet is on the task force meeting page. So if you go to the task force page, click on meetings, there's a form on that page that says sign in. If you wouldn't mind, please sign in. You can do it now, you can do it after the meeting, just don't forget. But that sign-in sheet is what we're going to be using for the record for who attended the meeting in person. I think we're ready to.
Okay, this is Carl. Next item is approval from July 2019. We have September's as well.
That was supposed to say September.
Okay, from September 2019. If I get a motion to approve, or are there any changes, modifications? Motion by Scott, second. Second by
Jeff
Drew.
Irvin, seconds.
All in favor, say aye. Any opposed? The next is the 2020 Task Force Report election discussion. Along with the agenda, Daryl sent it out, and I also sent an email to the task force about who's up for election.
And I've been keeping track on the sheet as to who has they're willing to run again. People have not heard from Wes Horn.
I did hear from him.
Okay. Okay. We have a vacant wireless position still. Lori McCarty, Rock County. I think they were the ones that weren't present. Don Collins, Washington, Yuma. Alicia, are you willing to run again?
Yes.
And Jeff is interested.
Jeff is. Okay.
Paul is not interested. Jeremy Duncan is.
Okay. Put him down here.
And yeah, so is me.
How about Carl Simpson?
I haven't heard from him.
And you, Carl?
I am.
So we have how many positions, 911 positions we have open? We've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And we only have 2 additional people running, so we need 3 more people. Mike?
For me, for Weld County.
Don't we also have Colorado Communities Incorporated?
CCI Barb Kirkman will remain through the next year as CCI's rep.
Yeah, so the 2 positions, CCI and CML, since those are appointed by the agencies, we don't really vote for them, they just appoint someone. So I need 2 more people.
Daryl, it's Danette. If you can serve in Don's.
Thank you, Jeanette. 1 more person.
Dini. I think she wants to.
You think she wants to be? Or you know she wants to be? Can you call her?
How many of those do we have?
So we had keep trying to use my track that was further. Route County, Washington, Yuma.
El Paso. So that's 3, right?
Grand Junction.
Okay.
This call is not running.
So that is 4.
El Paso, Teller.
That's 4, right?
Yeah.
Did I have 4? 1, 2, 3, 4. You're right. So we have Unless Dee Dee wants to, then. Maybe we can come back to this and see if she responds. If she doesn't respond, then we have one opening for each, we have one candidate for each opening, so there's not much point having an election.
Okay.
But if she does respond and she's interested, then we can put out ballots next week. Okay, so we can put out ballots. Can I put that on here? Is anybody else interested?
People we've not yet heard from, you hear from them, you put out ballots.
So I put out when I sent out this document, I said, we're going to take, you can tell us ahead of time, or you can tell us at the meeting, but we have to have, we can't hold it definitely.
And I sent it out again, and then we have it at the meeting.
Something we haven't done before is in the bylaws, so we should have been doing it. When we hold an election, the bylaws say that we're also supposed to include a bio for each candidate. So since we are going to have an election, I need everybody who is running to send me just a one paragraph why you are in the task force. That way, and I will include that with the ballot. What's that? It's mine.
Everybody on that.
Well, is it everybody?
Yeah, everybody on that list or just?
Interested in continuing, you
It
said?
says every candidate, and they are candidates even if they're running again.
And then Cheryl and Matthew will send an email about adding that hard hearing or hearing deaf blind, and that would take up a bylaw.
Right, and then we can talk about that, when we get the bylaws
Okay.
for this section.
Mrs. Carl, so we're done. Correct.
I believe so, yes.
So the next item is island vacancy in TC.
So, Darla, are you on the line?
Yes, I'm here.
So Darla, and as because of absences, her position was vacated, which gives us a vacancy for the ILAC position. Darla then would like to continue doing it, although she missed a couple of meetings. So the question is, do we have any other candidates for that position, or if not, we'll vote today to put her back in the remainder of her term. Her term actually ends at the end of 2020, so it runs opposite of the other ones that are up for elections. I don't think reappointing her to her existing position, I don't think we need it. Bylaws.
Are there any other nominations? Seeing none, can I get a motion? Bruce moves.
Second.
Vicky seconds. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Next up is reports. PUC staff update, Carol.
Okay, Federal, the short version of this. Most of you attended the statewide 911 Authority Summit yesterday. There is a grant page. I will send that out to everyone. I'm going to add a link to that grant page on the website. But that grant page has step-by-step everything that the 911 authorities need to do in order to get set up to get their reimbursement. One important point that has been hammered home to me by our grants people, so I'm hammering it home to all of you, is that no work can actually be done until the grant agreement is in place. If there's work that's done before that grant agreement is in place, we will not be able to reimburse you for it. Primarily, what we mean by that is that you cannot get your invoice from CenturyLink until after the grant agreement's in place, because then the date on that invoice showed before you had the approved grant agreement.
Hey, Darrell, can I ask you a question about that? So, is it going to be given an invoice?
That's why I just said it's basically the invoice.
So, but can it have And we're doing some, we have been, that would be attributed to at least some, not all. Yeah, I would say does it matter, maybe it's just a matter of how we date things, or, I mean, I don't wanna,
That's why I'm saying, let's have a conference call instead of going to report meeting.
we just don't wanna run afoul.
No, we don't want to do that.
So
Yes, sir.
could you send us the guideline that talks about that, no work?
So there'll be a link to that page on the task force page, but I'll send it out to the group too.
Because I think, I'd like to review that to make sure that we're compliant as we move forward.
Gotcha. Proceedings, the only open proceeding we have at the commission right now is still the 911 reliability proceeding, which is going to be an ongoing thing for quite a while. Our next meeting will be in January. We haven't set a date yet, but we're going to be meeting every couple months during the migration just to track what's happening to 911 network diversity as a result of the migration to ESINet. At our last meeting, we did discuss whether or not we were prepared or going to be prepared to provide a report and recommendation to the commission. The whole purpose of the working group was to come up with a price tag, essentially, for a funding mechanism for improving 911 network diversity in the state in the areas that are currently lacking diversity. And to recommend to the commission this is what the rules say, a new tariff or a change to the existing tariff to pay for those improvements to the 911 network diversity. Problem is that with the new ESINet tariff in place and everyone scrambling to figure out how they're going to pay for that, I cannot in good conscience tell the commission, yes, we need you to also increase the tariff to pay for network diversity. So for now, we're going to just monitor the situation as the ESINet rolls out to see how that changes network diversity in the state. And then also monitor the legislative process, since the legislative committee has come up with a potential funding mechanism through their proposed legislation to pay for network diversity. That would allow us to pay for network diversity without impacting your tariff rate. Does anybody have any questions about that? About where we're at on that, or why we came to that position? Now, I'll say again that the participation in that is open. You do have to sign an NDA though, so if you're interested in participating in those meetings going forward, just email me. I'll get you a copy, and we'll go from there. Looks like we need to add Lori and Amber.
Okay.
Federal rulemaking, the FCC has released a draft report and order and notice of further proposed rulemaking on Z-axis requirements. This document will be voted on their November 22nd meeting. I believe it was actually going to be earlier than that, but they moved the meeting date to November 22nd. I will be honest, I have not had a chance to read through this. It's very lengthy. It keeps the 3-meter accuracy guideline that they had previously talked about. That guideline was not liked by the wireless carriers because they thought that it was too stringent, and it was not liked by NENA and APCO because they thought it was too loose, which probably tells you that it may be a good compromise, but 3 meters still does not get you to the exact floor that the person's on. It's more or less the floor plus or minus 1. But if anybody has any more information about that, since I haven't been able to read it yet, I'd be welcome your input right now. Federal legislation, the only thing that's changed is the addition of a new item, House Bill 3836, Wireless Infrastructure Resiliency During Emergencies and Disaster Acts. And I think Carl's the one who sent this to us, so thank you, Carl, for letting me know. It authorizes states to require wireless companies to deploy infrastructure that can withstand natural disasters. It has been referred to the House Committee on Energy and Commerce, but as you can see from all the other bills that have not changed since the last report, there's not a lot of activity in Congress right now. Well, there is, but not on
But
this.
not on this.
I don't believe there are going to be any committee hearings for a while. Colorado legislation, Colorado General Assembly will return to session January 2020. In addition to the draft legislation that's before the task force today, there's also an effort to modify existing statutes. So back in 2017, there was a bill to create or to require workers' compensation to cover first responders who experience a traumatic event on the job and therefore have either post-traumatic stress disorder or some other related stress disorder. The bill, the way it was, the legislation, the way it was written, required the first responder to visually experience the incident, which meant that it, by its nature, excluded 911 telecommunicators. Earlier this year, the Colorado MENA APCO board actually passed a resolution that that legislation should be modified to say visually or audibly experience the incident. And one of the original drafters of that bill, or original sponsors of that bill, is going to be reintroducing it to make that change for us. So we'll watch and see when that gets a bill number. We'll let you guys know. There was another bill that would have created that had created in 2017 a grant program for first responders to get training and support for dealing with stress. And there was some talk about trying to add dispatch into that as well. However, that got removed, and so we're only talking about the PTSD workers' comp bill.
Daryl, on the PTSD workers' comp bill, I do know that there's already talk about opposition to workers' comp insurance.
Right. My understanding is that Pinnacle and the cities and counties that self-insure opposed it last time when they added in the other first responders, so they will probably oppose it again when there's a bill to expand it for telecommunicators. And that's all I have for my PUC report.
Darryl?
Joe?
I believe there was somebody from Colorado who was appointed to an FCC working group. That's cool.
I was appointed to CISRIC, is that what you're talking about? So I have been appointed to the CISRIC 6 Working Group 4, the CISRIC 7 Working Group 4, there's so many of them. So CISRIC is the Communication Security, Reliability, Interoperability Council.
You're off.
Something like that. And essentially the FCC asks, it keeps creating this count, they keep creating new iterations of this council and asking them to identify or to explore certain technical areas that they would like to create. Either doesn't mean that the commission is going to create rules around it. Usually it's more around a matter of creating best practices for it. This time they have several different working groups. The working group I volunteered for is working on security issues during transition to ESINet. Since it fits very well with what we're working on right now in Colorado, I volunteered to be part of that. And we've been meeting weekly. Yes, I know. I'm over volunteered, but it's an important one, so I wanted to be part of it. So I'll let you guys know what's happening with that as we move forward. They're very secretive for some reason. They haven't made us sign an NDA, but we're not supposed to talk about the content of what we're working on. But that's the topic. But hopefully before too long we'll have some actual work product that I can share with you. Any other questions about my report?
Thank you, congratulations.
Thank you.
Mr. Carl, the next is BSP reports. Anything from CenturyLink?
No, nothing today, thank you.
Anybody with Entrado on the line or in the room?
Mary Jane, have you joined us?
Next is standing committee reports. The agenda committee, Daryl.
So I now have on the task force webpage a mirror of sort of our list of upcoming speakers. These are not set in stone, these are kind of the tentative speakers and topics. We actually have a topic out through September of 2020. But if you guys have any thoughts or ideas, please send them to me. A lot of these come up in the middle of the task force meetings, and I just add them to the list. And maybe by the time we get to that item on the list, maybe it's not such a good idea anymore, or it's no longer relevant. But if you guys have any topics or speakers that you would like to see at a future task force meeting, please let me know. That's all I have.
The next is the bylaws committee. That's been active just because of everything going on with the ESNet as well as the legislation. Do you know when that will be back?
So I think, Kimberly, have you been able to join us?
She's.
Oh, she's not. So I don't think there was any plan to activate it until there was a need to. Based on Cheryl's recommendation that we make an adjustment to the membership, I think maybe we should send that to Kimberly and ask if she wants to reconvene the bylaws committee.
Okay, I'll do that.
Thank you.
Next is the legislative, Dina and Jackie.
Dina, you want me to take that?
You can get started and I'll join in.
Okay. We were all sent a draft legislation. We as the legislative committee would like to move forward on this draft. We do have a representative of the sponsor. We are still trying to get other co-sponsorships in the House and Senate sponsorships. So if anyone has a draft language, do you want to get the details or for a vote to move forward?
That's your business.
Let's ask questions. Do you have read the draft language? We have the executive committee report here, the executive outline to kind of go through what's in the bill and then ask for questions first, go on to the public. Any questions about the draft legislation, what it's trying to accomplish, anything anybody has?
Or any concerns?
Concerns?
Yeah, that was the other part I was going to add. Any questions or concerns or additions to what's in the draft legislation?
So I'll just mention, we sent a red line, not of the legislation, but of the executive summary. And it didn't really change the meaning of the executive summary, it was just some wording suggestions. Kimberly wrote this draft of the executive summary, was okay with those changes. No, this is Kimberly's version. But while I'm doing that, if anybody has any other questions about the legislation,
I think the other thing I would add to that, this is Athena, if we have been reaching out to a number of representatives and senators, trying to seek additional sponsors. If you know of a potential sponsor that we may not have reached out to, let us know and we will do that.
This is Brandy Dilling with CML. I just need to make a couple of things clear to folks. My membership has not been able to vote on this formally yet, and we won't be able to do so until December at our policy committee. So I think that ultimately the way I'm kind of looking at this draft legislation is so far, I don't see anything that really stands out to me that's very troubling, but I'm operating kind of in a gray area, if you will, and I'm waiting for clear direction from the membership come December.
Thanks, Brandy. Appreciate that. If there's anything that we can answer in the meantime, let us know.
Thank you.
Executives for that protocol, Brandon Lincoln, per membership, your membership of your cities. And so we need kind of on the ground from our end to take the executive summary out to city council members, to city managers, and in addition to the other counties, the county commissioners and the county managers. And we need this put in front of them for to make sure that when CML votes for their vote, they're aware of what they're talking about and why it's needed.
So I know we went through this yesterday, and like I said, most people today. So it doesn't surprise me there are a lot of questions right now. Part of the process, the legislative committee met at least every 2 weeks, sometimes every week, sometimes once a week, for around 18 months. Every line in the current legislation was reviewed, and sometimes multiple times at different points, because we would get it the way the committee wanted it, and then somebody else would have another thought. So it was probably the most thoughtful, thorough legislative review that I've ever been a part of or known about. It's so intent on making sure that every word is correct. This version up on the screen.
And that's
Yes.
Participants. We will have for your purpose to go out to the city and county police chiefs and your fire chiefs and your EMS board, all those people are informed about it. And you know, if you want to sum, it's kind of summed up in there what we're trying to do. This legislation is 30 years, almost 30 years old. It needs to be revised, bottom line. And in addition, as Daryl said, we're about the statewide supplement in addition to your local surcharge. In addition to that, state supplemental surcharge that would help us create diversity in the state. It would help us do things on a statewide project that we aren't currently able to do because all of our funds are local. And the funds would stay, those local funds would stay there.
Thank you. Is there anybody else with any comments, questions, concerns? If not, I'll move forward.
So moved.
Bruce moves, or second? Cheryl, second. All in favor, say
Aye.
Aye.
any opposed?
CCI?
Anybody else?
Essentially, I'll abstain
Okay,
in this vote. I appreciate that we got a chance to be involved in this, and thank you for that, but I think as a provider.
Should we do a roll call vote?
yes.
I'll mark it on here. I'll put it in minutes later. As soon as my computer catches up to me. Okay. So for CCI, it was no. CML?
So again, up until I have formal direction from my membership, I just don't feel comfortable casting a vote either way.
Abstain. Cheryl Garcia? Yes.
Yes.
Tim Kunkelman abstain. Mary Jane Rasher not present. Wes Horn, I assume abstain.
Yes, sir.
Vacant is office not voting. Darla? Darla Joseph,
Sorry, I'm here. I couldn't get it unmuted fast enough. I want to abstain too.
Monica Aiken is not present. Ray Paddock,
Yes.
Jay Slater,
Yes.
Bill Campbell,
Yes.
Lori McCarty is not present. Danette Martin,
Yes.
Tracy Oldmeyer, Tracy, are you there? Okay, we'll show that no vote.
She said abstain.
Oh, abstain.
He typed it.
Jackie Reynolds? Yes. Jennifer Kirkland?
Yes.
Bruce Romero? Alicia Librand?
I think she's just joined the meeting again.
Alicia Librand, you vote yes on the draft bill? Jeff Irvin?
Yes.
Connie Johnson?
Yes.
Or Phil? Yes. Jeremy Duncan?
Yes.
Athena Butler?
Yes.
Vicky Pickett?
Yes.
Scott Newman?
Yes.
John Shear?
Yes.
Carl is not present. Other Carl, yes.
Yes.
Patty West?
Yes.
We have 1, 2, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Get ahead of myself. $16 yeses. I didn't scroll all the way up. 17 yeses, 1 no, 4 abstentions, and 1, 2, 3, 4 not present.
Okay.
No votes. 5 not present, no votes.
Motion passes. Thank you for everybody for their hard work on that. Next is equal access. Holly or Cheryl, go ahead.
I'm concerned about I'm concerned about the chair. I would like to be the chair position. Cheryl has some written comments here. Okay. Cheryl says, Daryl, Holly, Luke, Gil, and I attended the Getting It Right conference for Access and Functional Needs Emergency Management Conference. They have one in College Springs and again in Aunt Rose. We gave 3 different presentations. It was well attended, and we got a lot of good feedback. Luke also? Yeah. The North Central region of the AFM committee is meeting on December 2nd at the Tri-County Health in Greenwood on the 1st through the 3rd. From 1 to 3. The speaker is Brian Werdner. He is with the Governor's Commission on Community Service. I would like to invite Anybody who would like to go? He continues there, on the planning committee for the state EM conference. I'm managing the nonprofit vendor tables. I would like to ask this task force to consider having a table. The table is no charge with one paid. And one paid to the conference. Is that right? Regis, registration. At this time, registration is $350. For one person. And what's that? Yarrow is presenting. So, that's all Cheryl has written at this time.
Holly, are you on the line? I don't know if Holly was going to be able to join us today.
About Luke? Do you have any comments? Is that what you said? Or what?
Yep. Good, thank you.
So as far as chairs go, the chair of the task force can appoint chairs of committees. I can tell you that Holly is going to be pretty much as busy as me working on the grant stuff. She would mind if somebody else wants to step up.
Okay. So are you interested in stepping up and doing that?
Yes.
Okay, then we can do that. Maybe have Holly as the vice chair or vice versa.
And Luke?
No.
Is he interested?
So we'll make the change on the webpage and everything. And would you be interested in having Holly as your vice chair or? Okay.
If I ever see her.
Well, I've been keeping her busy with the grant stuff, so you can blame me.
I know you've been busy on all this other stuff. Has there been any movement on the text to 911? Because I know there were several 911 centers that were kind of in limbo.
The only movement we've had is that Morgan County is now online, which, let's see. Excuse me. By the way, if you haven't seen it, Bruce remodeled the entire Resource Center website. And there's where the state map is now on text 911. Green is they have text 911 at every PSAP in the county. Red is they don't have 911 text to 911 at any PSAP in the county. Yellow is they have text to 911 at one PSAP but not the other. So Gilpin County has two PSAPs. Blackhawk PD has text to 911. Gilpin County Sheriff does not. And then same thing in Pueblo. Pueblo County, I think Pueblo County has text to 911 and the city does not, or is it the other way around? I never remember which one's which. Yeah, I think you're right.
Hey, Daryl, this is Phil down in La Plata County. We've got text to 911 at my PSAP.
Awesome. Thank you, Phil. We'll get that updated.
Thank you.
That's the
Versus San Juan
yeah.
National Forest.
This one right here.
So if anybody else has changed, let Daryl know.
Yep. Another thing that we've noticed too is that even some of the ones that have told us they are text 911 ready are not showing up in the FCC's text to 911 registration. It's not required that you register with the FCC, but it's very helpful to you if you do, because if you register with the FCC, that carriers are required to check that registration once a quarter. So even if you miss a carrier that might be serving your area, you will still get text to 911 from them because they're required to check that registration, and they know that you are text to 911 ready, and they have to provide the text to 911 to you.
And it's almost guaranteed you're missing some of them because of the over-the-top applications that can use text to 911. So those, there's no way you're going to ever know who will contact.
Plus, because the FCC is using that registration to gauge how much text to 911 is rolled out nationally, it makes us look less like we're less successful at implementing text to 911 than we actually are. So for the sake of making Colorado look good, we should all register with the FCC text to 911 registry if you are text to 911 registered.
Daryl?
Sure.
It's imperative. That each PSAP reaches out to the community and let them know. What? AAA. For example, AAA has it, but they don't advertise. Yeah. They have text. And no one knows about it.
AAA.
AAA has texting capabilities. And I call in through text, and I ask how many times have you gotten texts? And then never, maybe twice. Because they don't advertise, so that's why.
Well, even the 911 centers that do advertise it, like Aspen did a lot of public education when they rolled theirs out. They were actually the first ones to get it in the state, and I know they still get very, very few. So most people, if they can call, they prefer to call. But it's important for those who can't.
You don't want me calling.
So I did update the pie charts on here as well. I noticed they weren't updating. It was a formula problem in the background, but I got that fixed. So 93.9% of the population of the state is now covered by text to 911. 60.8% if you do it by area. So obviously it's more available in the urban areas is what that means. And 76.8% of the PSAPs in the state, the primary PSAPs, have text to 911. We've got to get to 100% eventually, but we should also acknowledge that is well above the national average. I had an update from the FCC at the October NASDA meeting. I went to Minneapolis. David Firth, the FCC, gave the national numbers, and I can't remember the exact percentage, but it was something like 45% of the country is covered by text to 911 now, by county, and we're at 60.8% by area, 93.9% by population. So we're not doing bad, but we can still get that up to 100%.
Thank you. Next is outage, Daryl.
So, if you guys looked at the draft report from the task force to the commission, you saw the attachment of a couple of special investigations So this is the new form we're using right now. I think I went over this at the last meeting, so I won't spend a lot of time on it. But if you have any questions about how we're using this or what the purpose of it is, let me know. I kind of went over it yesterday at the statewide summit as well. On the new task force webpage, there is an outage committee outage committee subpage, and on that outage committee page, there's a sort of a window in the window of the dashboard. It's not that easy to read because it's kind of small and you have to scroll around to see the whole thing. Before the next task force meeting, I'm going to try to break this out into its own page so that the graphics are actually on the page itself instead of embedded in another window. So it'll be a lot easier to read. We have had a lot more. One thing that doesn't show up in these charts is how many of our outages are actual voice outages versus ALI-only outages. We've had a lot more ALI-only outages this year. And that's important to know because if you look at these other charts, it looks like we're doing much worse than in previous years. For instance, this chart that I've got centered on the screen right now shows outages as of today's date in each year. And we are at 16 for 2019. By this same date in last year, we were only at 14, and then only at 9 in 2017, only at 8 in 2016. So it looks like a bad trend. But if you looked at how many of those were ALI outages as opposed to voice outages, it doesn't look as bad. It does make me wonder though why we're having so many ALI outages. One thing to keep in mind is that after a PSAP migrates to the ESNet, their ALI will be delivered over that ESNet instead of over a separate circuit like it is now. So a lot of these ALI outages should go away. And that's reflected down here too. If you see our outages by cause, most of those ALI outages are due to a circuit failure or a modem failure, and that's why system failure is so much higher this year than it has been in the past in terms of the cause. So over half of our outages have been due to system failure of one sort or another.
There are like updated text messaging at 95%.
Oh, good. With the addition of Lambada, great. Another thing to know about this new page is that down at the bottom, it says report 911 outage or issues. That first bullet will take you to that self-reporting page that I've shown you in the past, where PSAPs can actually report any issues that they're experiencing at the center. This can be anything. It doesn't have to be restricted to just basic emergency service. It can even be a quality service issue. It can be an originating service provider issue. The whole idea of this is if you're having a problem in your area, you can let us know and show it on this page. So other PSAPs, if they're having a problem, can check this page and see, is it just me that's having the problem or is this a regional issue? If I'm having a Verizon outage, does that mean that the neighboring county is also having a Verizon outage or a Comcast outage or static on the line or anything else that may be related to any particular vendor or not? The way to report something new is with this red button up at the top left. Click that, and it will take you to the form that you use to add. And once you hit submit, it will automatically add it to this page. Right now you can see there's only 3 in there. It will automatically add it to this page. You'll also get a link that will allow you to update your record as the situation changes. Any questions about outages? Essentially, do you guys have anything to add?
Okay. So you have a question on that? Did you get that report a day ago on Verizon? It almost looked like it was across the U.S. It could be.
Yeah, someone forwarded it to me, and yeah, it listed like 3,000 PSAPs.
Yeah. I'm sure if anybody reported that. We experienced allergy issues with that.
So all of the carriers are doing that. You hear that complaint from them that because of the FCC rules, they have to report it so quickly that they don't have time to investigate and find out whether it's a valid issue or not, or whether they're over notifying. So they err on the side of over notifying.
Well, the issue I had was it was actually they sent us the outage information and then the fix, like literally 2 minutes apart, and it had been going on for about 2 days.
Oh, gosh.
So we had actually experienced the issue the day before we got notified. So I don't.
So they didn't need the
Yeah,
CC
no, they
notification.
absolutely did not. I mean, it was, I'll have to go back and look at the email, but it was maybe 2 minutes apart between the notification and when they notified us saying it was fixed.
Yeah, we got that too, and I was ready to forward it the email, and I got the other one, and
Yeah.
well, that's not gonna do any good, so.
It makes me wonder if they didn't realize they were having a problem, or if they weren't able to identify they were having a problem. I don't know.
So I had a question about that.
Yes.
Because it did say there were 2 bullet points in that email, and one said Annie Alley and the other said other.
Yeah.
What does that mean? We're not getting phone calls?
Other.
It's kind of a big deal.
Yeah.
And I was gonna scroll to the end to see if they explained it, and then I'm like, I'm not scrolling through how many PSAPs here. This is ridiculous.
Yeah.
So did you miss any phone calls? Do you know?
No, we didn't lose any phone calls that we know of, but we did have alley issues for sure. We were getting these weird scrambled.
First text.
Yeah.
I don't think other is a fair bullet point.
Yeah. I know the FCC has looked at notifications to PSAPs. For a while, there was a working group at the FCC that was trying to come up with a standard template for the carriers to use. And I don't think they ever finished their work. They just kind of figured it out. So hopefully they'll start that up again. I get a response from David Firth about half the time that I contact him, so I will try it. I'll send an email and ask him if he knows that that effort's going to be revived. If they haven't given any thought to reviving it, then I highly encourage them to do so, because right now, every carrier uses their own template for sending out notices. There's no standard for it, and I think that causes more confusion information.
Or even they're required to report a minimum specific information in calls.
Yeah. We're having an outage issue of the type other. It's very helpful thing to do. Anything from Cecily? Have you guys noticed an uptick in your end on alley outages? I'm wondering if like some of this equipment is reaching end of life or something, because this just seems to be getting a lot there.
Well, it is reaching end of life because next gen happens in the next year.
Right.
Right. The ending that happens within the next year or so. But I don't know if it's useful life. And I don't think I've seen any across our platform or across our different states and places like that. We partner with the trial here, and we have other folks that we work with in other states. I haven't really seen anything. There's always a couple outages here and there. I haven't seen a trend.
Because I don't have a chart for it, it's hard to see if there's a trend. What I'll do for the next meeting is I'll create charts for 2016 through today, showing what percentage of our outages were alley only. Maybe that'll help us determine if really there is a trend, or maybe I'm imagining something, because I'm just going on my recollection of these as they come up.
There's no deferred maintenance on system that's going to be replaced next year. There's no problems, there's no deferral of maintenance on systems or equipment that's going to be replaced or outdated.
We still have ways to go before we're on the side.
Yeah, we've got
Information comes.
it's a little bit of. Okay. I think that's it for outage committee.
Thank you. Mrs. Carl. Next is prepaid and collections. That's inactive. Reports committee, Darrell.
So I did send out a draft report from the task force to the commission. It's time for our 3 times a year report. I normally send those out to the reports committee ahead of time to get feedback. Unfortunately, I just ran out of time. So the task force on a in order to get it to the task force in a timely manner, I had to go ahead and send it out to the whole task force instead of the reports committee. So I apologize to the members of the reports committee. Next time I'll get that out sooner. Go ahead and pull that up. So in that, this will all be combined into one document, which will be uploaded. So you've got the report to the task force. There's an appendix showing the dashboard, a snapshot of the outage dashboard as of November 3rd. We attached the 2 special investigations that we've done since the last meeting, which happen to be the only 2 that we have done in total. And then a list of the PSAPs of the state by text to 911 status. What I would say is probably need to update that to include La Plata County so they're getting the most up to date. So if the task force does approve this report today, I would ask for that one, ask for approval to make that one amendment. And then I would ask for any input anybody has if they've had a chance to read through the report. If you have any suggestions or comments, I would ask for that before we have a vote. Anybody have anything for me? One item I do want to point out is we've been tracking this Phillips County Phase 2 wireless issue since I started working with the commission back 4.5 years ago, almost 5. I know that they're still working on it. I don't know when they're going to be getting that turned on.
Wasn't that?
Wesley, you have something? You have an update on
Yeah,
that?
I was speaking with people yesterday about that. There's a couple of issues. So we're gonna circle the wagons again to make sure from the CBE to the local CLS and
The last time I got an email forwarded from him, it sounded like the issue was with their CPE vendor right now.
Yeah, I thought that was talked by surprise. Gonna build down. That was a condition of the surcharge.
No, it was, well, we had, as a condition of the surcharge increase, we told them that they had to report to us every 3 months. But that was it. Yeah, unfortunately, the commission does not have, well, I say unfortunately, for
Well,
most of you, it's not, probably not unfortunate, but we don't have the authority to tell you what kind of service you have beyond CenturyLink. But they are working on it. Not hearing any comments or questions about the report itself.
And there's not a lot of changes from the last one.
No, I always use the last one and then I update it. So there were updates to the Engine 911 grant program. There were updates to Next Generation 911. I added links to the YouTube channel for the task force so they can do prior meetings if they wish to do so. I updated text to 911 because of the fact that Morgan County has gone live. Actually, it doesn't look like I have Morgan County on that one.
The map is now updated as well.
So I would update both of these, both this and the appendix about text to 911 to show that.
Any other comments on that? So can I get a report or a motion, sorry, to move to approve the report to the commission?
So what?
Scott moves second. Patty seconds. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion is approved. Next item is EZNet Users Group. Bruce?
Most people were in attendance yesterday, like Daryl said, so I don't know if there's a time to go over the grants. It's incredibly important with the EZNet. And the start date has been pushed back from October to, what's the first one, January 7th? Yeah, January 7th for the first piece out to migrate over, and that'll be Aurora that will be doing that. We, through this process, Kimberly and I put that summit together, co-hosted it just as a one more stab at getting everyone involved and getting it to understand how the ESIMAC came to be, the tariff came to be. Daryl, Wes, and Monica did a roadshow with all over the state, and there was a statewide conference call, webcast, to make sure that everybody understood what was going on, and then we continue to hear from frustrated PSAPs and authorities that, hey, this is an unfunded mandate, where did this come from, I don't want to do this. We've been talking about that tariff in this meeting since 2017. The old saying, you can lead the horse to water, but you can't make him drink. If you're not going to involve yourself in statewide efforts, you probably are going to be surprised, even when we do make it. The PUC sent notifications out to all the PSAPs that they have addresses for when tariff was filed to give them notification. There's been tons of emails that have gone out on the task force listserv as well as the PSAP authority listserv. And I'm probably preaching to the choir because everybody here and probably on the phone are the ones that do involve themselves. But you've got to get involved. We put these meetings up and we have remote attendance. It's pretty easy to stay without my soapbox.
We know how many are left that do not attend the summit or road show.
No, we didn't calculate that. There was about 70 people that RSVP'd versus who were not that.
I know Monica was tracking who had attended one of the road shows.
One of the road shows, yes.
So she might, and I know she reached out personally to the one that hadn't attended any, and she couldn't get a response from.
Right. Some of them just don't call out.
Right. But there was a small
line as well. I said I am on the line as well, so I am here. I am participating.
No, we were talking about Monica Million.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm like, wait a minute. I was having problems getting connected earlier, but.
So, and I guess a little bit of my concern is when you go to get them migrated is, are they going to call you back?
We're reaching out to all of you. Maybe you need to let them know. Because we're done that. And so it's a process, giving them the heads up, it's 4 to 9 days and all that. So things are make sure that things are buttoned up pretty well within 60 to 90 days. Part of our project management.
So have you contacted everyone yet, or the ones that you're early contacting and get their firms?
No, it's not that. I think for the most part, project managers talking. I think we're contacting them 4 or 5 months. Whatever. In the service. So 6 months out. In fact, there's a little bit of also.
There are some that Monica haven't responded to Monica, who haven't reached out to.
We reached out to Monica. Please reach out to us. They're on our list.
Do you know if that one you haven't had a response from?
Well, it is, some still are farther down that calendar chimney. For example, some of the sheriffs think they have to do this, they are aware. I'm not too concerned. I do think it's important though that the point about that grant application and all that stuff. Getting those stocks before I work, big deal.
Speaking of which, Roy, did you get your email from this?
I got the, and I apologize, Daryl, I was out for 3.5 weeks. So
I've been in meetings for the last 2 days anyway, so I don't know if you can send it back or not.
Yeah, but I did this.
Okay, cool.
Daryl, so the grant was based on, when you applied for the federal grant, it was based on the current number of trunks statewide.
Right.
So if a PSAP is going to increase their trunk, they may not be eligible for full reimbursement. Say they've increased by 10, they may only be eligible for what they originally had when the grant application was made.
So my plan is to address that if it happens. I don't know if anybody was planning on increasing their concurrent sessions from how many trunks they have.
I thought we did.
No.
Grand Junction is.
Well,
I decreased by 2, so there will be some of that.
And Carl decreased his by 1.
No, we didn't decrease it. I think Rock County's.
Oh, well, I had 7 written down.
Oh, no, we had 6.
Okay.
I think Rock County's decreasing theirs to like 4 or something, but they have 9 now.
So my thought is that if enough others are decreasing theirs, if somebody else wants to increase it by a couple, there'll be enough flexibility in the funding to still pay for it. My hope is that by the end of the process, there will be enough people who have decreased or didn't use the full 10 hours of project management fees, especially near the end, because essentially they should be probably getting a real pattern or cycle down. Then that'll give us a little bit of extra money at the end that we can maybe pay for some of the other incidentals like putting in additional electrical circuits for the installation and things like that.
Well, I have,
If that's the case, it's a twist and third.
Well, so the federal grant application was based on how many concurrent sessions we thought people were going to want based on how many trunks they already had. We also knew that a number of them would probably be reducing the number of trunks. So if you are increasing, you're only increasing by 1. By 2.
and I'm decreasing.
Yeah, grant direction is going up by 2 as well,
I'm just
but
saying that's an aspect of it.
Right.
Third, right, in budget.
Right. Well, we'll have to address that when we look at your situation. The problem is there's a certain amount of federal money coming. So if we end up needing more money than what the feds are able to give us, then we may have to. What's that? No.
Well, and then, I was originally listed as 6 PSAPs, which would.
Not that my pay cut wouldn't pay for 2 of those trunks.
Which I guess could be considered that we were thinking about 10 hours of project management time for each of those PSAPs. We have one phone system and we're migrating at the exact same time. So I would think that potentially has a decrease in project management.
Yes, there is one. The efficacy of the new chairs, we're looking at 2 sides, not 6, so you wind up.
I think same thing applies to Larimer County too. I think we got 2 demarcation points.
Well, I don't think there was any other way to do that at the time, because if you went out to everybody, you wouldn't have had it back in time.
No. We had to use the information we had at hand.
Anything else on the net user group?
Nothing.
Okay. Next is Colorado, or 911 Colorado Foundation, Vicki. No update? Yes.
Bruce, so I'm sorry, since I couldn't get it, you also have to have a regular 15-minute summit.
Yes, and we will have the call on Wednesday next week. Yesterday, the summit kind of substituted the pre-call meeting, since we were there all day, but we will have the meeting next week with all of the authorities and central.
Okay, thank you. I might add, next week, the agenda, we'll be talking about revenue reports and our insurance program and monetary lessons.
No problem. This is Carl. Next is Colorado Public Safety Broadband Update. Is Ed Mills on the line? I know they've handed that off to PSCS to get the update from AT&T and First Step for the yearly or the bi-yearly updates that they're supposed to be providing. PSCS report, Dini. Okay. And a SWIC report. Is Glenn on the line?
Yes, I am.
Do you have a report for us?
Okay, yeah, wanted to thank all the PSAP representatives for participating in the continuity of operations workshops we had last month. Turnout was pretty good. We had, I believe it was 51 different agencies represented. Over 100 people participated in that. Feedback's been pretty good on that so far. We do expect a report back from the facilitator on the results from those workshops. I won't have that probably till late this year, early next, and once I get it, I'll forward it back through your organization to the membership. We have an incident tactical dispatcher course underway right now in Louisville. We're 9 students when we started that on Monday. We were hoping for a little bit more, but it's hard to get telecommunicators out of the comm center for a 4-day course, so I appreciate those that got them there. We are planning now for next year for offerings from the Emergency Communications Division of the U.S. Homeland Security. That catalog is available. I think Daryl has a copy, and if he would forward that to the rest of the task force, that would be helpful. If not, I'll make sure he gets a copy that we can send on to the task force. Our time frame will be fairly short to get offerings for next year requested, probably by the end of the month. So if anybody has some interest in that, please get with me, and we'll see what we can do to provide some offerings from the feds for our PSAPs throughout the state. End of report.
Hey, Glenn, this is Daryl. One of the items that was in that catalog was, I mentioned to you that the ESINet users group would be interested in, was an NG911 planning workshop. Is that going to be able to make the cut, do you think, in the request to the feds?
I would say that's right out there with the most important ones. I think that would be a good place to start. So that's certainly on the radar.
Thank you.
You bet.
Okay. Next item is a divisional fire report here. I did attend the last meeting. They're going to have 4 meetings a year. Their next meeting is January. The meeting in September was basically a kickoff. They kind of gave a highlight of some of the funds that fund them. If the counties contribute money to help fund them, but it's short several $1 million. Some other challenges they have. So hopefully we'll have more updates as this moves along. But I think it's good to have dispatch 911 involved.
Carl, this is Jeff Irvin. Can I interject something?
Yes.
I had a technical issue when you went past prepaid and collections. I just wanted to let everyone know that I'm undertaking a project to reach out to some of the services that remit to us, for the various telephone service providers, and see if they can provide me with contacts for people that are using any kind of automated system whereby they can remit via ACH or some other mechanism, both the monies and their returns, just to try and hopefully automate our system and take a big labor chunk out of the revenue side of our operation.
Okay, thank you. Next item is all business 2019 standards document, Daryl.
At the last meeting, I provided a draft of the 2019 standards document for approval by the task force. This is in response to the commission rule that requires the task force to annually update those standards. At that meeting, it was suggested that I reach out to Christian, pronounce his last name, something like that, with Intrado, because he's extremely knowledgeable on these standards, as well as to try to find others who would be interested in giving a stab at reviewing the updates that I have made. Because I don't have an excuse, I have not been able to do that yet. So I'm going to ask that be tabled until the next meeting. I will be giving a copy of that to Christian and looking at who else works on those standards committees to see if there's anybody else we can send it to.
Okay. Next item, new business. We don't need a formal motion.
No, I don't think so.
This is Carl. Next item, new business, NASNA update. Daryl.
So I talked a little bit about it. We've got a very long update from David Firth at the NASNA, the October NASNA meeting. I will be getting a copy of this presentation, which is available to NASNA members, and I'll make it available to you guys as well. One thing I did want to cover is that at a previous task force meeting, we had talked about problems with the Apple Watch and the concern that there might be other IoT or wearable devices that may cause problems, similar problems for 911 PSAPs in the future. We did have quite a discussion about that at the NASNA meeting, and NASDA is going to reach out to both Google and Apple to try to get them at our next NASDA meeting, which unfortunately is until June, to discuss this. But Nina was also present at the NASDA meeting, and we're going to be talking to them about what we can do to try to get more coordination with the big operating system vendors to make sure that what they're putting out there to the public is done in a way that makes the most sense to the PSAPs. My understanding is they have actually started working with some of the PSAPs and some of their rollouts, but I don't know if they're doing it enough because there's still problems with how they're rolling out these devices. Cheryl?
And I have a lifeline, and it has GPS. And when I push the button, they can find me within 6 feet of where I live. Is there an update for cell phones? I'm not doing that. Is there an update for what? For cell phones? In regards to what? And for GPS? They can find people and keep it on themselves.
So both Apple and Google are starting to send device-based hybrid location, which is essentially how your pendant device there is getting the super accurate GPS location. So it's using assisted GPS as well as other sensors to get a more accurate location than just GPS alone. But I think in order for PSAPs to receive that, right now they have to have rapid SOS, I think is the only way to get that delivered. And some PSAPs have that and some don't.
How will I know? How will I know who has a rapid
SOS?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't think there's really a way.
There's not really a
Is that something the resource center could track, like with the text to 911?
You track, but it would have to be self-reported because I'm not sure.
I don't think Rapid SOS won't
Yeah.
divulge their customer.
Right, but could our PSAP say, yes, I have it, either?
Yeah, but it could be the same problem with anything else. If it's self-reported, people don't report it.
Yeah, we could do it as part of the PSAP profile.
Yeah, that would be good.
And we get decent response rates on those, not 100%.
Right. I'm just curious if we can put something in there. Then we have some knowledge in Colorado.
I'll talk to Monica.
NRCPD or
Yeah, I'll talk to Monica about that. Maybe that's something, a question we can add to the PSAP profile.
And of course, if we could get all CPE vendors.
Yeah, great.
And
Vicki?
Yeah, I just, you were just jogged my memory when you were talking about the Internet of Things. One of the things that we've noticed anecdotally is that we're having a lot more 911 calls, and we've discovered it's probably related to a change with the iPhones. They now have an emergency function where if you hold the button, it actually comes down and it'll automatically call 911. And so we've actually seen an uptick in this. Yeah, and we started checking into it, and it looks like it's related to that. I don't know if anybody else has experienced that. It's one of those fun developments that we don't consult.
I have some other updates from Google and Apple that might be relevant to that as well. So this is from Google.
There you see.
So the Apple Watches, all of that are now.
This is an animated gift that I have from Apple. This is a new, not from Apple, from Android. This is a new feature that they have where if you call 911, there will be a button on the screen that you can press it, and it will send this information by text to voice. So the call taker will hear a computer voice reading this out, and it will show the caller what's being read out at the same time. One problem I have with this is that if the caller can't hear what is happening on the 911 side, they don't necessarily know when the call taker is picked up. So this could be going to a line that is waiting is either still ring or is in an ACD hold.
What is the plus? So how do we go use it?
I think you can plug that number into that plus code into Google Maps and you can pull it up. It's basically their abbreviated version of GPS location. And you'll notice at the bottom it says, I require medical assistance. The idea is that there will be 3 buttons there. You can press law, fire, or EMS. And it will say at the end, I need police, or I need fire, or I need EMS. And if you need a combination of those, or you don't know which one you need, then I guess you pick one. Cheryl?
Should that be first? I can't see that.
Well, I don't know I don't know if the order of the information is correct. I'm more concerned with the fact that I don't think a lot of centers will get any of this information if they don't answer the line fast enough.
Right.
Does it continue to repeat now, you know?
That I don't know. I tried to test it myself and it wasn't rolled out to my phone yet. I have a Google Pixel, so I don't know when this will be available.
So would this automation talk over the voice? Like if I were a 911
Yes.
caller and I'm on the line saying, I'm a such and such, this is gonna talk over me.
Yes.
Only if you.
Only if you press the button.
I would assume you're not gonna initiate it if you're not.
Right.
Oh, okay, got it.
Now, what they do, one thing the part of this they do have in place now is if you make a 911 call, it will pop up with a map on your screen, on the caller screen, which can be helpful if they're not sure where they are, help them orient themselves. And what they get is the device-based handset location, which is potentially better than what 911 is getting on NEL.
Darryl,
Yes.
a few years ago, there was district rulemaking with the FCC, about the FCC looking for guidelines on that. I think NASDAQ filed that.
They did. They've also filed letters with the FCC asking for guidance on that. The FCC has steadfastly refused, saying they do not have jurisdictional authority over apps. I think now that we're talking about, these are not apps, these are operating systems that are really much more integrated than apps with the phone network itself. I think there might be an argument to bring it back to them and say, at least for these things that are built into the operating system, is there any possibility of providing at least some best practices or something? They did have some workshops to create some best practices, but I think they ended up with like a 1-page document of that going in with a lot of guidance.
How about NASDAQ reaching out some other stuff, the other stuff, getting the FCC?
Maybe for 2021. So Apple also sent out a couple of things that you should be aware of. So Apple sent out a white paper. This one is location-based routing. So we've always talked about geospatial routing in next generation 911 as one of the things that next generation 911 is supposed to do is provide geospatial routing for wireless calls. Apple is saying that they can help the carriers provide geospatial routing before it even hits your 911 network. But the carriers will have to cooperate with that. So what they're talking about is creating a pathway to send device-based hybrid location information to the carriers when you make a 911 call. And then the carriers can use that in conjunction with shape files from the PSAPs to send it to the right PSAP to begin with, rather than routing it based on cell tower location. The bottleneck in that concept is that it requires the carriers to work with the PSAPs to get those shape files. And I haven't heard any noise from any of the carriers saying that they're interested in doing that.
So,
yes.
My contact at Apple, the carriers are working toward this, but they're not ready just yet.
Okay, so maybe this is something they're working on.
They are.
Okay.
T-Mobile is probably the one that's furthest along.
And then my only concern is this would only apply to Apple users.
Right.
When Android actually has a slight market advantage there, so we have to get Android to also do the same thing to get this consistency. And then the other thing they sent out text to 911. That Apple is going to start sending handset-based location for text to 911 as well. Because right now you're getting, in a lot of cases, you're getting less than phase 2 accuracy on text calls. You should actually start getting better location information from text from Apple users.
Because Android's been like that for a while, at least with Rapid SOS.
Right.
And I think this is part of that. The Rapid SOS getting a better location.
And it would be nice if they both did the same thing, but because they're, competing business with each other, I guess they have to do their own thing. But it makes it difficult for 911 to have be getting different information from different handsets.
Well, at least on the routing piece, that's not something you necessarily have to decipher.
Right. You need to know how accurate the location information is you're getting. On the routing piece, if they can get it routed to the right PSAP before it even hits our network, that's a benefit in our. Yeah.
And at least in 911 matters, one usually tends to follow suit with the other, so it may just be.
Right. But neither OS provider wants the other one to be able to say our phone is better for emergencies.
They're safer with our device.
Right.
So is the text to 911 location information, that's also something that needs to be in cooperation with the.
I don't think so, because this is just delivering the location information to you.
Okay. Just better capability with the
Right.
phones.
So can we facilitate that by, for example, for those jurisdictions that have shape files, having them on the UC website or task force website, or is it a security issue?
I don't see what the security issue would be. I think that the difficulty would be getting accurate shape files from all the network authorities. And actually, our presentation today will be touching a little bit on just this topic of how to collect GIS data from varying jurisdictions. I could definitely see that as being something that the state 911 program could do if we had the funding to do it. Or it might be down to the legislation.
But we already have a website. Does that have a cost? It's just a page and links.
If it's just better putting the information up, that's fine, but I think you need to be able to verify it, be able to make sure that you don't have overlaps in shape files, make sure there's no gaps in shape files. And if there's a disagreement between the two of the PSAPs as to, well, I think my shape file border ends here, and the other one says no, that's my area. Then we know. So I think it's more complicated than just putting a link up there with a file. I think that's all I have for the NASNA update. As always, it was very informative. We spent a good deal of our time just going around the room, hearing from what other states are doing. There's a lot of activity in a lot of other states right now. A lot of them are well ahead of us, probably not surprising to say, in terms of next generation 911 rollout. Some of them got ahead of us and then they fell behind. I don't remember which state it was that actually issued an RFP for an AG 911 system, and then the company got bought out like a week later, which would be devastating. So, yeah, it's a mixed bag across the country, but there's a lot of activity out there.
I started the conversation she said as long as the agencies were okay with it. So going back and forth trying to figure out she would need to reach out to each other.
It might be just as easy for us to do it.
Well, if she can, at least as the first bulk, we can start asking them profile yes.
This is Carl. Next item is discussion possible rulemaking regarding approval of 911 surcharge applications.
So I've had more than one commissioner express displeasure with the lack of guidance that the commission has on how to approve 911 surcharge applications. The statute really doesn't provide anything. A lot of times when the statute leaves something very open like that, it's expected that the commission itself will write its own rules to provide guidance and guidelines around how to fulfill its duty, how to fulfill its own statutory duty. But we don't have any real guidelines in our rules either. So I kind of wanted to just float this idea today, talk about this. I think if we do have a rulemaking, what I would like to do is before we even get to the point of introducing it as a proceeding at the commission, to talk about what would be in that rulemaking. Yes, I know we're talking about yet another collaborative series of meetings. We would, Tuesday just opened up. It would not be like the last rulemaking though, which took, what was it, like 9-10 months for us to go through everything? Because that was over the entire section of the 911 rules. This would be one section that we would be looking at. Right now, what the rules have in it is just a list of what has to be included in the notice, essentially. And it says that there has to be an attestation that you have not misused any of your 911 funds over the last 6 months. That's not much to go on as far as giving the commission guidance on when it should approve 911 surcharge increases and when it should. What the statute says is that if a 911 authority finds it necessary to increase their surcharge over 70 cents, they have to apply to the commission for approval. But it doesn't give the commission any guidance as to when it should approve something and when it shouldn't. So the only thing we've used in the past is it necessary? And what you're spending it on, does it fit under section 104? There have been commissioners that would like to, even if it doesn't change the outcome of the decisions, would like to get more information in the record. And in a couple of cases, we've actually reached back to the 911 authorities that applied for the surcharge increase and asked for more information. Montrose County was one of those, and it essentially came down to the fact that there was a deconsolidation issue in that county. The commissioners were concerned that, okay, we don't know that this amount is necessary or not. We don't know what the cost difference is between these two concepts, being consolidated or deconsolidated on. A similar issue came up recently with Federal Heights, which applied for a surcharge because they're breaking off into their own 911 authority. The commission was concerned about whether they're making the right decision based on whether or not it's necessary, which is the only thing that we have in the statute to serve as a guideline, depending on whether or not they become their own 911 authority. So in both cases, we reached out to get further information, and then the commission was comfortable making the decision that they made. But it would be more efficient to be able to get that information up front if it's listed in our rules that these types of questions have to be answered in the application.
There's classification and requirements, there's also value decisions, common law. You certainly have a pretty large body of decisions within service plans.
Okay. So the commission can write new rules at any time that it chooses, which can change its own practice in terms of how they decide on issues. I think that's really what they're asking for this time. They want more guidance in the future as to whether they approve, not necessarily whether they approve or not, but what kind of information do we need to be able to get from the authorities before they make decisions to approve them. So the question is, we probably don't have the bandwidth to start this right now. Maybe after the first of the year, would there be people willing to serve on a working group to look at draft rules for 911 surcharge application guidelines?
This include
the ability to take 70 cents plus inflation. Saying that anything, if that 40, if that's what it's out. Automatic. Up to 70 years.
Unfortunately not, because the statute requires it for everything above 70, so we can't automatic, it has to be an application process.
Simplified application.
In our last rulemaking though, we did consider the idea of having a simplified rulemaking process, say if it's above 70, but it's still below $1.34 at the time, then it would be a simplified process, and then if it was above $1.34, then it would be the full process. The only reason we didn't include that in the final version of the rules last time was because CTIA objected.
Right, and we were trying to get the mill to be approved.
Right.
So maybe we pushed it.
Right. So there is a possibility that could be revisited, yeah. I think, because there was a lot of support for the bifurcated approach last time. The only reason we didn't was because we had some very vocal opposition from somebody that was on the committee.
The other thing is we also are going to be rulemaking to establish what the rate would be for the current legislation.
If under the draft legislation, yeah.
So does it make sense to start a rulemaking that's going to address some of those issues? We might even have another rulemaking within a few months that would incorporate those as well as the officials.
I think that's a fair question. I think the issue is we don't know if the draft legislation has been passed or not. And in the meantime, we're still getting applications.
And the draft legislation, let's just say in the perfect world, it passes. Nothing can be signed into law until July.
Well, it can be signed into law sooner than that, but the earliest it can go into effect if they include a safety clause is July.
So that's the earliest, if in the perfect world, everything.
Right.
So, I mean, I get where you're coming from, Joe, because it makes sense, because the legislation does call for various rulemakings. But do we want to wait for the surcharges to be rulemaking? And we can make that now.
I think it would be done with this week.
Yeah, I would hope so too, since it's not very expansive. And I'll tell you the concern, I think, is that the surcharge increase requests are getting larger and larger. We just approved one for $2.76 last week. And I think the commissioners are concerned that we are not filling the record with enough evidence to fully justify their decisions, especially as the increases get higher and higher. Okay, so I just wanted to key that topic up today. I'm not ready to start a working group or anything, but I want to kind of gauge your thoughts as to whether that was even something that this task force would address or not. Maybe after the first of the year.
If there's a procedure, we shouldn't participate. If only for protective purposes.
Well, my hope is, like I said, my hope is that we could do it before it gets introduced as a proceeding, because that worked really well last time. It's coming to consensus before we even introduce it.
I was going to say, I think you came up with an application form with documents for people, and you could also update that with additional information required.
Right.
Which would be a law type of approach that could be great.
And that's true. On the other hand, not everybody uses the form, and I've been told that we cannot require them to use the form.
If there was a ruling saying so.
Yes. If the rules say they have to use the form, then that will allow us to put everything we want in the form.
But they was supporting the cities as a check off to see.
True.
I would support that. Try to come to a consensus.
I agree. Also support that.
Ready for the next item?
This is Carl. Our next item is future meeting locations. Daryl.
So this is the meeting where we decide where we're going to meet next year. Motorola has offered the use of this facility again. I think it's been a great facility, and I appreciate Motorola providing the location. I do think it'd be a good idea to try to move it around a little bit. So this year, what we did is we did Motorola for the first, it was January, March, May, and then July and September we had in Rifle. We came back here for this one. I believe in the past, CenturyLink has said that they probably have a facility that we could use. We've also used, I don't know if Jeff Irvin's on the line. In the past, we've also used West Metro Fire, which has been fairly successful. One of the challenges that always happens, and we saw today, was that going to different locations every time we have different issues. And yeah, you can't seem to get away from it. It almost seems like the less technology we use, the better off we are. If we're just doing it all through my computer, at least I know how to use that. If we're doing it through a wall computer, that's where we have the issues.
I think the concern more though is if it's just that the computer, participate in the moment.
Right. Now, what we might be able to do with that, I know in the past when I was with the Resource Center, I don't know if Monica still has it, but we had that wireless mic system. It wasn't perfect, it got staticky and sometimes there was feedback, but I think it helped a little bit in large rooms.
I did pass it on to others.
I think it's nice to move around to different facilities and see docs. I think we can invest in upgraded systems.
Daryl, this is Jeff.
Of every odd month. So if we want to start making a list, we got January. Yes.
Daryl, this is Jeff.
Jeff.
Hey, the county converted what was a small hearing room out of the courts and admin building to it's kind of it's a really cool meeting room that they've converted it to. So I could, if you would like us to host, we could certainly do that from time to time. I'd have to check into availability.
So March is March 12th.
March 12th.
I'd be interested in hosting at some point. They did place the equipment at South Metro would be used. Which was one of the locations. So,
Well,
May is May 14th.
Let's get the dates in. So 14th, July
9th.
9th, September
10th.
10th.
And November 12th.
November 12th. Before we start selecting locations, I should probably ask: are we good with continuing with the every 2 months, second Thursday?
Yes.
Okay. Don't stick with proven track record.
Don't upset that.
Yeah.
Yes.
So do we have any takers for January? Denver. Denver has. If you guys have not been to Denver's new facility, it's amazing, and they have great meeting rooms there too. So I think that'd be good. Any objections to Denver for January? March, still kind of snowy.
We'll check.
Red Cross building or?
Red Cross, O'Dell County. UFC. So she'll check the location as well.
We want to put something in tentatively or? Overall? Such silence in the room.
No objection.
No objection to which?
Because we already know that, well, do we know it's available or?
I'm looking right now.
Okay.
And Darryl, while they're checking on what it will in March, what if it rained, maybe we could go back to the states? There you guys see that happening? That's much
In the South Metro.
But downstairs or something.
Downstairs is South Metro, versus the state goes.
Yeah, I know CCNC's tried to have some recently that, since they rearranged it in the EOC, and they found it harder to do. So it's either the governor's policy room, or whatever it is now, or downstairs.
How about, South Metro in that building? Mm-hmm. Okay, because they've got the big meeting room down in the basement, right? You go, Smith? Any objections to South Metro for May? Parking's great there.
Yep, I just
Motorola
looked
to
over.
March.
We're good. Yep.
Okay.
I can do July.
Lion Rifle?
Yeah.
Any objections? Yeah, we've got several new meeting rooms at the PUC building too, but nobody wants to park down there. September?
You were thinking about volunteering the route for us.
Since you didn't stay, you know, you've got.
Oh, Rock County. Well, that's my only hesitation on what you're suggesting too, Cheryl, is I'd like to get confirmation today that.
You could do Grand Junction if you guys want to, just to get a western side.
What's that?
We could do Grand Junction in September if you want.
Don't they have Wine Fest or something about the time too?
Yeah, well, it's Wine Fest and peaches are out.
Yeah. Oh, all right.
Well, we know what lunch is gonna be like at Grand Junction.
Right.
How about November? Yeah, Vail, let's do Vail in November.
No, that'll be the week we get 10 inches of
Shaky
snow in
guy.
one day.
Oh, dear.
No, Carl's not on the line, so I could ask him, but Pasquartello would be good.
It's not on
Yeah, well, he won't be, well, it doesn't have to be a voting member that works for.
No, anybody can host. Probably want to keep it back on this side.
I can check on West Metro, but I don't know.
Okay. We want to put something can we put something tentative then?
Jeff got an upbuilding.
Well, that's far enough away that hopefully we can change it.
Yeah, probably.
Yeah, that's true, since we're talking about November.
That's not to be done. Something around September.
Okay. Well, we have our first five set for 2020 with one tentative.
Thank you, everybody that's volunteered. Anything else on that?
Nope.
And then the next item is open discussion. Anybody have anything?
Phil was asking, has everyone heard of speech to speech? Relay service? You call a number. What? The operator will call somebody. This now works for me. It doesn't work for you. However, there are people who
Don't need to talk now.
So it's Relay Colorado 711. They have multiple settings, so one is speech to speech. So for people who have a speech impairment, there's an operator that can interpret what that person is saying and relay the message. We tried it with Cheryl, did not work. But for people with a less severe impairment, it does work. So it's a free service.
So essentially it allows the person to speak to someone who's been trained to understand people with various types of speech impairments.
Yes.
And then relay that with their own voice.
Right, so it can either go to 911 or person to person, whoever you want to call.
Oh, she'll send you a message.
Okay. Which raises a question for me. How many of your PSAPs get, how many of you get relay calls for PSAPs? Rare occasions. You do get them.
I think ours come out on the admin line.
Yes. Do they come in on admin lines for all of them?
I don't think they have a raise about
Well, I know there was discussion at the FCC, I didn't know where they landed on that, of being able to, of trying to get relay companies to work with a company like Trotto, for instance, to relay it to 911 with location information. But I don't think most of them have the technology to do that.
Majority of our calls are to BRS.
So that's just, for callers, that's important to know that the 911 center is not giving their location like they would with a direct call 911.
Well, in addition, I think that when they get the relay calls, they're not getting any around features.
That's what we're saying.
Right. Relay company doesn't get it, and it doesn't get transferred to the PSAP.
Yeah, that's what we're saying. They don't have the technology to receive it. They don't have the technology to relay it. Okay. Anything else for open discussion?
Can I come and move an update on where we are with the IoT testing? So this happens, right? Ken Ray, I'm on the sales.
Similar.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So, and so with the Vesta project, like we have two projects Vesta. Vesta is certified, and we just completed that last month's project service solution, and all works is going in Q1 and expect to go through that process. So in both cases, we are charged. So we go through that testing because they're required. This I3 is an interpretive solution. It's important to go through that testing. Any service providers, but once we do that,
So how are those calls delivered to the PSAPs then?
Daryl, would you ask the gentleman to stand closer to the mic?
Or just project?
Yes, okay. What was it you wanted
So
to
if they're, so this is delivering
IP.
essentially delivering alerts from IoT devices to PSAPs?
No. This is as we move to next gen. Colorado, we have to move from analog RFAI to I3. So every vendor in an energy core service space interprets the IP standard differently. So you have to go through all the energy suppliers have to go through compatibility testing with those suppliers. So in the state of Colorado, essentially we're using product solutions. So our call-in product, Vesta, we have two, Allworks and Vesta. Vesta has already completed that process. So as Colorado moves to the I3, IP next gen standard for Colorado, Vesta is ready and certified for that. Allworks is getting certified in Q1. So we scheduled time and try it out for that. So as you make the transition, we're ready.
And you have to do that certification for each core service.
That's
provider.
correct, yeah. So we have a core service solution, so we have a lab for all of them, it's just something that the industry has to do. And so that is going on today in the States. So just important to know because call handling solutions have to go through that testing to be sure. I know in the state there's Trado, there's Allworks, there's Vesco, there's a real mix, so that's just something that needs to be important to know. And then if we don't charge, if some people may charge.
Sounds a little bit like what Nino was doing for 2 years of chemistry evaluation.
Yeah.
I don't know if they're still doing that or not.
I mean, it's I3 is great, but it is, again, it's interpreted, so if we had to change Vesco to meet the spec. So it's not, you can just assume it's
So that's required for someone who's using your product with a SIP connection.
That's true, yeah, you can use a legacy network if so but when you move to the next one, you have to so that's, again, it's
Thank you.
Anything else for open discussion? Next item is lunch presentation.
Is lunch here?
Lunch is here.
So
Everything's ready.
let's,
Take 20 minutes, 10, 20 minutes,
15?
15 minutes,
Cut the middle.
15 minutes,
And then come
back
back
for the
in,
presentation.
and, so get your food, come back in, and then we'll have our lunch presentation. Tom Neer from Digital Data Services is here to talk about geographic data collection for us. Yeah, just getting this set up is enough.
So is there anything? Is there anything that we need to do differently that help you guys? Okay. Okay.
We're good. How are you?
Because I try to remember to announce my name when I do it.
Hey, Mandy, how are you? Yeah, no, it's
Good choice, girl. Talk to Jeff. You go, dude.
yeah.
All
Clearly clicking on the wrong
One second. Scott.
So you can type, it's just the track.
Yeah.
So you click on the screen where you want to.
Yeah.
So that works.
Last about an hour, right?
Mike's got more just to make this.
But I know these are
Yeah, I really asked. But that's where just do that. Just do.
Because I did want to work, but I wanted to check for 10 minutes.
But yeah.
Yeah.
They want to control that. You should be there.
Yeah, you gotta I think they were okay.
It's this is
I had one person
I
say
don't
it's
know exactly how I
very
figured it out. I think I was just trying.
So I'm like, okay.
So I can do three.
It's good to know. Because it was like all this stuff, what you need to do.
Anything else you would
And then
first?
it's like, to me, it's more what they think about, not what they, it's not like somebody is
So
standing
it,
there saying.
I'm not sure if that's the official way to do it.
That's where I came out.
I presented, here are some things you can just think about, whether you do them or not, it's up to you. But you just need to think about what you would do with people like this, or what you might want to consider, and give them some of that feedback, but, yeah, it just is, and you know, I think Colorado Springs, the community was engaged.
Okay.
Montrose. I didn't see that at all.
We built that in the lab.
And one of the things that I always think about is who I present to. When I present to the board, I present very different than I do at the session.
Right. Email address. Gotcha.
So I'll be in touch.
Okay, sounds good.
You watch
So
for it.
again, it's like.
Giving you the heads up, you know.
Talking about if you're
Got it.
a
Dump in your
parent,
spam folder.
you know, as examples, that's really when people say stuff, you know.
So that's sort of the challenge, but in some ways, it should be.
My first consultant, do you have anybody else?
I'm not gonna go in person, I've asked them if I can join.
No, because they can't hear, they can't see, they're moving fast, they're easily confused. All of those.
I'm struggling to keep
But, no, we have.
All right. I will. And then, of course, you'll bring it right.
My son.
Okay, these are how many hours we had. We're gonna tell you about those hours on stage. That's the data that shows.
You know what, we went there about a week on one.
If that's a possibility, that would probably be the cause.
Right.
Yeah, check this out.
Yeah, where'd I get those from?
What's that?
Where'd I get those from?
Kind of hung out a little
Oh,
bit.
this.
Your presentation.
PSAPs know that they're not gonna get the free version,
No,
otherwise
because I
it's
wasn't,
stage.
I was busy doing that.
It was secondary.
Or, because it's what I had to present one.
Yeah, with
You know, through all
And
the
then one I had
fire,
to.
storm, fire, and all this. So they did their mission. Yeah. So that's.
So I started negotiation.
Anyway, that's. Yeah, so.
Let me see if I got something.
So you, Kelsey, James, and his wife. Kelsey's friend. Okay, so I didn't know. Yeah, that's James' wife. Kelsey's friend. But he's the one. So
Yeah. Where do you miss
I asked you about next week, so.
He's talking through the story. So you like him, future son? Yeah.
Well, we have like.
Yeah, Casey's a good guy.
Yeah, just keep time.
What Matt said.
Oh, yeah.
She said, just typing into my mic, is there any, 2 feet away from it.
Give it to him, he is watching like.
To be, I think tonight.
Figure it out. Whether it be a motor.
Do you know Matt well?
And
I worked with him over the years.
guys. I like them.
I don't look for a lot.
I really
No,
enjoy
I've been, I called you like 7 times.
So.
great guys.
And then you don't. And then I call you, and then you don't call. And then I call you. And then I call you, and then, but I was thinking about maybe going to this place.
It's consideration.
One of my, I try to just, it's not.
Let me look for that information.
Yeah, so I'm gonna see all
Because they don't,
that.
they're pretty weighted sensitive too.
It's
Yeah.
kind of dry though.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. The survey at the very end,
He talks about you quite a bit.
there were complaints about it.
I don't see him very often. I know that's what I said, but once a year. He's told you very fancy. Well, it's usually, it's probably good that I don't see it too often. Yeah. Talking about Maggie.
Oh, we'll be there.
He's posting already. Seriously, has gone overboard. Toxic and special Exactly. You know, the friend that I'm meeting just after this said, we should go for this round. Hey, perfect idea.
No, I doubt it. Yes. It's also very good.
I knew we had it. And Matt was going off with me yesterday about something. Remember, if you do something, it's a little too far.
Then they are too. Like, you mean you don't have,
Just tell me all these details.
I mean, I think we need.
There is. Yeah, there's something that came out. I feel like after we get here, I had like a lot of money. And next step, which
Well, I know the municipalities have a
Yeah.
Western Colorado
I work for next to Colorado. Do a lot of training. You do prep.
No, so no GIS.
So it's pre-programmed messaging, because they use that for like 1 month.
My analyst is also a GIS person.
Yeah, but only ours is Yes.
Someone like.
We've worked with calls and
Please, it's never done, but I was actually. We need like, we're looking at, in our last record was this favorable about it. Particularly looking at the cat.
Yes, so we use communication devices that come with different dialects. We have Southern, we have Florence, we have Joel,
What I'd like to do eventually is take the analysts and have them
yeah, I mean, you see them. So
we could take on a Carl and dedicate her.
yeah, we should.
Yeah, that was.
Yeah, one in Arkansas, I haven't seen
Backbone.
that. We have an old guy, we have a green guy.
That's perfect. That's
She's good at it. In my office, I have a poster on the wall. Yes, thanks, she got Senator conference.
I think it's.
I always give her a hard time. I'm like, all right, come in. We are not talking about it. She wants to hear about it.
Right.
She wants to see it. So she came in for her review with like this armloads of maps. She's like, all right, Jeremy, I'm ready. I got all these things I want to go over. I'm like, no maps.
It's all that.
So when she went out on maternity leave, I got her a one.
Was there anybody in line?
I just.
Yeah.
You know how long it's been?
I used to work in space.
I sit next to Becky.
Yeah.
My office, she's our cat and cat. And she spends all day.
Yeah.
Figuring out the map,
Yeah, she's.
like fixing points, or
I used to work.
she's deep in the code, she's deep in some spreadsheet.
Right?
When I look at
Oh,
her,
all of
and
these.
I'm like,
She's rarely in the office.
Yeah.
I'm so glad that's your job, it's not mine. I can do it.
Yes.
I used to do the piece of it. I had to learn a lot of it, just based on past efforts and help speed it up. But it takes a mentality, personality.
And she's good at it. She'll sit there and, she has her earpods in, and she's listening to like TV shows and stuff, and there's no way I can do that. You need a multitasker, right? If I was doing something that different, there's no way I can.
See, I can get a TV show. I can do that. I used to do like programming classes and stuff like that. Watching football. I wouldn't actually do all sorts of things, just like on a laptop. How do you do that?
Well, watching football is not the same as trying to do something specific in the public safety system. And she can do it, I can't. I can use it, but I can't even listen to a podcast.
I can't listen to music reports, I don't listen to music.
Oh, yeah?
If I'm concentrating on something. So unlike you know how writing appears to be very easy to do for your it's a lot of effort. I don't like communicating and writing.
And your numbers?
But so when I have to write something, draft something, it's a lot of effort. But classical music is really
At least you know what you need.
See, it's been an interesting dynamic because like if I'm working on something like there's an outage or something like that, like that right now stuff. It follows and there's just about this, about that, did this, because I'm so used to that. That's how my brain works. I figured it's that. We had a city manager sitting there. He's like, just let it sit. Like, what are you doing? I'm like, no, this is how it works. Like, I need those things to key off of because it helps. And I'll sit there and have that conversation. No, it's not this because of here's why. And she's like, well, what about this because of? She's like, this is how my mind works.
It's helpful to understand how the strategies effectively work. Before we start working together, they would drive them crazy because I think I did my processes by talking through it. They know how the business goes. It comes across as very indecisive, scatterbrained, and it's not. It's just many people do that inside, and I have to verbalize it.
Type it,
Huh? No, I can't type it out. I mean, I can. I have the ability to, but.
well, yeah, but that's not the way, that's not the best.
I'm the opposite. My dynamic tends to be that so I've already taken 6 steps into it. So like I'm following feedback, so just trying to pull me back. And I did that to Brett yesterday. And I just apologize. Absolutely. Yeah, Jeremy, I've got a weird one for you. It's about audio recording in the room. And I didn't even know you finished the question. And I was like, oh, you need the time for this. Especially reading your handset plug in the same jack. But when you log off and press the it in your solution, pick up noise on it. Well, his recording platform, the way it triggers is off of that Jack said, so he's recording early in the process.
Yeah, the
And they're
other
trying to
thing that
figure out
we
why,
do
so I didn't let him get that question.
Yeah.
I'm like, you gotta put the handset on.
I think we're going to start the presentation. Our presenter today is Tom Neer with Digital Data Services. I met Tom at Colorado Mean and Aspen Conference this year.
Answer his questions before we even finish our
Yeah, it was this year.
It's one of those, that's
And,
how I get it.
we're going to be talking
So I have
tonight
some
about
notification.
I'm Jack.
So we have a conversation.
Starting the meeting.
Starting the meeting, so somebody like me.
Starting the
is
meeting.
crazy.
We're going to be talking about GIS for Next Generation 911, particularly about platforms for sharing GIS data, and I don't want to say any more because I'll get it wrong because that's not my thing. So I'll let Tom explain. Thank you.
My name is Tom Neer. I'm with Digital Data Services. We are a small GIS consulting company here in Denver. 5 employees. We've been around about 20 years now. We, for about 10 years, have been working on the delivery with our clients, which are medium and small local governments, cities and counties, in supporting their dual use of GIS and CAD. And we've built a lot of automations for that to simplify it because these counties tend to have a high attrition rate, regardless of wherever the data is, and their addressing gets out of whack because somebody doesn't know what their addresses are. So what I wanted to talk to you about is opening up the discussion of GIS for Next Gen 911, because that is not going on in Colorado that I have been able to find out, except for in little regional pockets. And it is a complex subject. I was representing Gilpin County on the North Central Region GIS subcommittee where we did 11 county data sharing. So as part of that all hazards group, we've gone through this process again. I know on the Western Slope, there's also a very active component there with Jackson. All of this data supports each of our environments. I think looking at this and moving down the road is important. Biggest concern is that GIS takes time. I'm going to use Kansas Next Gen 911 migration timelines. So this says 2013, but actually their act was signed in 2011. If you look, 2019 is when they are finishing this transition this year. So it took them 8 years to do that. We put that timeline on us, that's 2027 before we switch over to spatial routing as an The problem is, it's complex. I'm going to pick a little bit on JeffCom here because I'm a resident in Jefferson County and I know a lot of these. But I wanted to point out the address points for the state of Colorado. The state of Colorado Office of Information Technology for the last 2 or 3 years has been trying to compile all of the address points for the state of Colorado. This is what they have. And if you look at this, we have the Western Slope counties and the Front Range counties, and a lot of big holes. And those tend to be our clients, which are the small cities and counties who they don't understand complexity. If we look at JeffCom, when you file a discrepancy report, we have 3 days for an error turnaround. So you have a bad address point. JeffCom files a discrepancy report on that address point. Who does it go to? Does it go to the Jefferson County Addressing Authority, City of Arvada, City of Golden, City of Lakewood, City of Wheat Ridge? You have to manage emergency service boundaries. You have all of these others. So you have Indian Hills Fire Protection District, Golden Gate Fire Protection District. You're working with all of these agencies. And on top of that, you have to JeffCom will have to manage their PSAP boundary with all the surrounding PSAPs, which is Boulder, Gilpin, Spear Creek, Park, Douglas, Teller, Arapahoe, the City and County of Denver, and a variety of city level PSAPs. That level of coordination in GIS today is difficult, extremely difficult. North Central Repository took North Central Region took 3 years to come to agreement just on one center alone. We're now talking about all the additionally, you also now have to understand what topologies are, what datum transformations are on top of this competitive data. So I keep mentioning the North Central region. These are the Colorado all hazard regions. This is funded by FEMA. Going on close to 10 years now, not longer. Started in the mid-2000s. North Central is probably one of the bigger ones. West is another really active. Each county in North Central submits their data to a centralized database where it's all normalized. They've already built the extract, transform, load processes to do this. We're going to need to do this statewide for the ESNAC. And what I'm proposing is we need to leverage the GIS knowledge in the North Central region, the West regions, with the schema requirements that we need to come up with a statewide standard, especially to help counties like in the Southeast or the Northeast regions. We're sure you're not going to have the people who create that data on their own. So there's lots of layers to talk about with the next gen 911 data model, but I think the most important is the PSAP boundary, because this is where it all starts from for you guys. It's the most critical layer because it's what's done through routing. So I sat down with the Excel spreadsheets and some of my contacts around the state, and I built polygonal coverages for all the PSAPs as I could figure out what they were. This is not perfect, but it is topologically clean. You could theoretically push this into ESNet, Auto's ESNet today, and begin routing with this. You'll have to get feedback here. So if we go into Jefferson County, we have this information, the Excel spreadsheet. We have Federal Heights in here. But one of the difficulties we had in NCR was in determining boundaries. We had to go back and forth with each other, talking, sharing data, spending the time. And it took a lot of time. And what I'm proposing is setting up a map like this that each PSAP can come in, and what they can do is communicate through a journal entry with each other. So if I'm JeffCom and I actually am responding into Denver slightly, what I can do is I want to submit a boundary change and grab these blocks. And so I would fill out a little form here. I threw this together in about 4 hours on this board. It would, I have to simulate a user here. It would automatically clip out that piece of Denver as a graphic and then send them an email and say, hey, JeffCom wants to annex this area or service this area as part of their PSAP. So at that point, Denver could say, I reject it, and they send back with a note saying, no, you do that. Or they could accept that, and what will happen is that this system will automatically extract it from Denver, apply it to Justin, and you can download it. Colleges maintain that place, you don't have any gaps. And so this centralized data can be shared and managed. And then you can make sure that all of your road center lines, address points, ESP boundaries, all of that information is accurate between your PSAP boundaries. So my question to all of you is this something that would be beneficial to start this discussion and look at these boundaries and say, yeah, I have an issue with it or not?
Yeah, that's actually a bad example because we actually already went over that was repository and all those jurisdictions, but the concept is the same, right? It should be something that should be statewide.
Right, but your statewide or your repository where you grab more data and so on. When is that all up to SAW 006? So are you using the schema, the schema?
I believe so.
Okay, so.
Maybe no country. But I mean, that's the
Right.
point. The point is, yes, something like that.
Seeing Florida, yeah, seeing
So we even talked about something like this related, not even just for, not even for next gen, but just for carriers to look at, to be able to know, okay, I have a customer that lives in this area, which 911 authority is supposed to get the search ourselves.
Right.
Having one place that they can go to put in an address and figure out which 911 authority serves that address, so they can remit to 911 searchers.
Not postal boundaries.
Right.
No such thing as postal boundaries. Because it's not politics.
Well,
It should not.
The carriers, but it's not a good deal.
So I'm serious, that's really, really bad. And that's a GIS nerd thing.
Is this a tool that your firm developed, or is this a tool that you're using from someone else? Or?
So it's built on the applications, Vortex Essentials. The data we built just because what we do. Before the other thing that we are doing with this is we're looking at the way using measure databases. One of the difficulties in GIS is revisioning. So if I make this change, how can I revert back? GIS tends to be static and create amount of things. We want to record all of the transactions that go on in between this so that as attrition occurs, if somebody goes, why did we grab this? You can look back through the history and say, oh, we made, DEFCON made that request to Denver back in 2019, and here's who approved it, and cool, because none of these are not legal limits. Pick on DEFCON again, just because I know this thing. The Jefferson-Gilpin County line. This line is problematic, always has been. These houses right along this line are actually Gilpin County, and that goes back to the 1950s and 1960s. Jefferson, Gilpin, and it occurs all over the place, and you'll see that same thing occur with PSAP boundaries. I started with the census counties, which is ecologically clean, and then I took the DOLA city limits for the city PSAPs and put those in. But in a lot of cases, if you look at the inholdings, county inholdings within the city, that PSAP probably doesn't always live. Right now, it will be responded to by say Aurora, not and that can be erased out once it's a matter of following data. But these are things that just coming to agreement on this ESAP boundaries. With a tool like this, we think it could be done in 6 to 12 months. We can do it as sharing data back and forth. I would say 1 to 12 months. And that gets even more complex is that, you know, did I share the data to you in Colorado State Plain and you're in Central North, but I'm using NADCON through somebody else's issues, GRS 83. And I'm sure that's all Greek to you guys, and it should be, but this is the complexity of this data. It's, I'm part of the Road Center Alliance working group for MENA. Somebody brought up, we need to have sub-centimeter accuracy on the road center lines. It's like, almost all of us said no. We would just like road center lines that are accurate in a meter or so. Because, I mean, are you going to really dispatch somebody to anything smaller than 1 meter? But it comes up, and it's where that was coming from was actually through. But I'm in between right now, ISAPs and in between all hazard regions. I have lots of contacts in most of those. Both of these verticals need to be talking about these resources. Is everybody familiar with all hazard regions and what they do? Well, so I mean, all that data should be shared.
You know where the state got this data from? Did they get it from the counties or from the staffs? Where the state got the center line data, or not the center, but the point, address point data
They got it
from?
from the counties.
Okay.
Assessor's offices mostly?
It varied, and all I was showing was the public. There is some private in there, and I think in a lot of cases that private came from CSAPs. And the reason it was private is that it had not been cleansed. We have, when we share data, we have to cleanse it to law officers. I forget the state statute. There's emergency responders, police officers, older portion, lawyer, doctor. Those all have to be cleansed out, and that's what it is that.
The problem to keep from county data is, I mean, there's a reason why all those little cities have their own GIS. County data's not so.
And any public safety data is a lot more accurate.
I work with both data sets. So I was just mentioning, we had a client in California. The county had a combined operations center. They rolled out the EZMET and 2 cities left. Rolled out that. Our client was another city who stayed in. We were building some automated software to do addressing more. It's really critical that your road center lines super clean. And said, oh yeah, we can do that. Actually, across the board, the data. After said, please fix this.
Yeah, just we had to go out and hire and spend on money
We took 56,000 out of address points. We got it down to 260. We listed exactly what the problems were. Whether it was a typo, or you typed in 913 instead of 713, or put an extra character in there, or but I mean, looking at the data, I could been around it enough. I could see 3 separate people. I could see the errors consistently because people were trying to do things. They were taking road center lines and condensing the address regions down to what existed on the roads, not That's all the things that setting the guidance standards for the school will occur. And I think that was Tom as part of starting to go on. Because the data exists here. The all hazards is aware of what the needs for public safety. They know what they have, they know the issues with it. I mean, my parents live across the village, and my mother was on Old Blue Fire. And if she was not a local resident, what comes out of the dispatch center, a lot of times it comes back, it's just, who am I responding to? Give me their name. Don't give me an address if it's wrong. Just tell me. And that's the fastest way for somebody that's rural.
So what you showed with the boundary, was that actually about annexations, or was that more about where response areas or concept boundaries overlap or have gaps in them?
So this has no gaps in it. This is topologically clean right now, but it's not accurate. It's interpreted off of an Excel spreadsheet that I got from the site that says, for this, I know in Otero County, Rangeley is described as the eastern half of Otero County. Where do I cut the eastern half of Otero County? You know, I know if I load Gilpin in on the Daryl's computer, I brought Gilpin's boundaries. I have corrections to these county lines to correct for that. And I also know between Gilpin and Clear Creek, that county line is being corrected to represent a 1904 survey, rather than what the census thinks it is. The intent of this is a centralized place where the data is known. This is all WGS 84 as required by the data standard. People can use a simple interface to transfer, to request corrections, to review apps. Everybody's aware of it. Because the ETL process that is commonly used by many of the states today, you can't, who says that Jefferson County's, or JeffCom's PSAP is any more accurate than Denver's PSAP? How do you set that priority?
Well, no, then are you saying that this is the accurate one, so we have to argue? Yeah. Our boundaries from.
What I'm saying is we set this up so that you guys can just open up those lines of communication to make sure your boundaries are accurate and your neighbors know exactly what it is. Down the road, you have this lineage of that data and why you can do it.
So he's saying that there are no holes, but there are inaccuracies because he's read this on the spreadsheet on every purpose. But this gives us a tool to go in and make the corrections.
Right, and my concern is people looking at it would take it, oh, this is the boundaries. And so ours must be inaccurate. Yours is, you know.
You would build this from the data that we would provide you, right?
That's my question.
Like our local jurisdictions, if we have GIS data, we would provide it and build that map to have those discussions, right?
What I would recommend, I leave this data this way, you would upload your PSAP boundary and flip that so that look at the discrepancy. If this is a known, where this started, and it's topological. Everybody knows what I mean by topological. It is not accurate. It is my best interpretation based on known data sets. But it does need to be. And so you would upload the data set and then you go through. Now, I would if we can get the PSAP down to build off of that. But where I find conflict, I say, I can compare your boundary to what I know, what I load into CAD system. And I can tell you if there's an error there. You in Boulder, I don't know, but that's one of those ephemeral lines, and everyone knows what it is.
areas where police don't agree on where the boundary is. But these are not our police. But that is a very critical thing. We are not determining this. This is a PSAP response that may cross a political jurisdictional boundary. Yes. So, a prime example is I guess that was delay. So Picken extends down into Gunnison here because of the continental divide. Because it was respond. Now, they're not responding now to residents. It's likely it's some background. Are they?
Yeah, oftentimes they're marbled after you.
Oh, is that Marble?
Yeah. So
Oh, okay. And I forgot about Marble.
Well, there's also funky boundaries on the north side of Picken with Eagle County.
Yep. I guess. Yeah, enough about that. And I actually talked to Barry Lackner, and they will be annexing north of Elgin-Bell and west of Hurstgram.
I did not know that.
But I was told. Factory.
I'm sure it is. Why wouldn't the PSAP be the last to know?
I don't totally understand it. I understand the one down in Marble because of the continental divide, but I would think if you're going up in here, you would go up Cattle Creek, which comes in.
So, do you know how this compares with, like, I know Entrado has been used for updating routing data in their databases. Do you know how this compares to that? Or
I'm working in the CAD space. Always been.
Okay.
A lot of that's. These boundaries were based on a boundary we have 1,000. Check. The same one that Geocom put up was secured, but this one.
See, I could see something like this being used for, like, even if we're not using it for geospatial routing for NG91, what we were just talking about today, whole money shape files or PSAPs for geospatial routing on the carrier side. If we had something in place like this that would allow the PSAPs themselves to determine where their boundaries are before we share those shape files with the carriers, it might make the routing more accurate. And then during the legislative committee meetings, we were talking about what I was mentioning earlier, having shape files of the authority boundaries, which are different than the PSAP response boundaries, for purposes of letting the carriers know where to remit now and surcharges.
Sorry.
Well, just because sometimes our county cities are in disagreement on when something becomes in the city limits or not in the city limits, so this would help.
Like, I know during the legislative committee meetings, Kimberly was talking about a neighborhood that Lita collects surcharges on, even though it's technically in well too. And that kind of thing has always been an issue. And the hard part is communicating to the carriers, okay, this community belongs in Lita, even though it's a well county.
Can you show me? And this is 911 authority?
Yeah, I think that I can only. Go ahead.
it doesn't.
Yep.
Bruce, does
It's
Buckley
very
do their,
island of a city with counties.
does Buckley do their,
It's, you take that,
They're all very good. Except. Sale. I did. And Gunnison has a map. Gunnison Hinsdale has a map.
So with this, if we're doing our date. Not a piece of, starting. That has to be converted to the same date and all that.
So your data, how your data is stored? Okay. So typically, it's going to be stored in Colorado State Plain, which is done in cells. For accuracy, very simply, if you peel that globe and lay it flat, how do we decide how to do that? And how do we get it back to the globe? In the SMS, everything's going to be stored in your coordinates platform in WGSA. So everybody has to do a transformation math of how do you get this flat 2D surface back into a spherical.
That's my GPS says which one I want, and I have a clue, so.
Yeah, there's really nasty math, and there's, it's in, 1983 datum is being replaced by a new one for 3 years. That's causing problems there.
We have to go through.
If you don't, what happens, if you don't do that transformation correctly, it's going to shift. And then you're not going to watch it get it overlap. We actually ran into that with the North Central region where address points was because somebody that moved down transformed them locally, transformed them back correctly, and then threw off. And so we had like a 5-meter shift. So any way to abstract that out so human error doesn't introduce that problem is good. Something like this is that you use it to communicate back and forth with groups around and PSAPs to make sure your boundary is good. When I'm all done, I can about 14 minutes. I can come in here and I can download a shapefile of my boundary and load it into my system to make sure whatever transformation I need to do, make sure that all my data is really just from a high level, using this as a discussion tool to open up the discussion.
Somebody has to do those transformations, make sure they're correct. Is that you? And, what do we do? I'm just trying. It varies on. There has to be an arbitrator eventually who's going to say, yes, no. See, I would ask to upload a lower boundary WPSA4. You do your transformation however you want. Well, right, but you just tossed cases where people did that before. If somebody has to be an arbitrator to say, yes, this is right, well, it's not. That's what I'm and setting up extra standards to say that if you are in Colorado State Plain Central, you should use this transformation method to make sure that it goes to WGSA.
Well, I think what Joe was saying is more along that Jefferson-Denver boundary. Vicky says it's hers and Denver says no, it's ours. That arbitrator, is that what you mean?
No, just like it is coming in the correct format. And so it's plotting correctly into this map. And I do know that the office, OIT office, they're working on this. they went through a big process to get the data they had all into the same format. And it took a lot of time and effort and grants.
But part of it, what I would see more is, yeah, you aggregate this, and then your role would be, here are the areas where we're seeing issues, discrepancies, and then sending it back. Hash that out, right? You're the map guy that says, here are the problem areas. Not necessarily anything.
I mean, this is wrong format. This is
I remember
offset by 5
did
meters.
engineer. And I would tell our engineer, our PSAT boundary shape file that I needed in this format, but she would just export it in that format.
Yes.
So what's the big deal?
You're missing a layer of, she knows how to do that. So when I say, if I'm in state planning, I needed WGS 84. I select WGS 84. But underneath there's a button. Now, the application might guess what it thinks it should be, but what you should be doing is create the setting as, because the math varies on where you are. So if there's a difference between the transformation method for all of the US or just the responses. So if Colorado responses determines US transformation method, so you leave out the errors that were introduced by the last couple. It actually makes a difference over distance. I mean, it's the difference between US an international foot and a US circle foot. It might be 100 feet, but over a couple miles of that.
So there's a lot more to it. If somebody needs to look at it and say, this is correct, it's not correct.
Now, in auto will, within the CRF, when you anybody from auto that should go through the PC process as you're running through the administration interface. And if it runs into the lapse or so on, that takes it back to
You know about the north central and the west have done a lot of tests. Are they all in the same format, things right, or are they practicing?
There's different. But they built a process. Both of those groups have really good. Yes.
So we put them on the same power map. We can fix that easily.
Well, they're using. We're using.
Yes.
West,
Thank you.
Zone 12, western side of Colorado, to Zone 12. These are the little patches of GIS that I really worry about the clients. We were proposed that they needed to hire somebody that didn't kind of fix so they had to that salary now. We'll do it for this GIS by assistant planner with one person. Yes.
So then the last question I have is if you put this tool together, it seems to me that we have like fire response areas that bridge into different counties. And that would be important for us to get straight and resolved with the other counties as well. It would be useful in this including, in fact, even more information. Is that something you're proposing, or that's a separate challenge?
Down the road, I think that is something out of law. However, I would caveat that is that Nina has a emergency service boundary working group right now. It just started out. And that will come out with some guidance. And I'm related to that. How to, these are, as we are going through agenda item topics to discuss in this documentation. It's a working document. how best to handle things like, fire districts that span multiple jurisdictions. How best to handle that. In Gilman, the big thing there from a dispatch is timberline fire protection has a mill levy at certain portions of the county, and they respond to the rest of the county, but they bill. So they either bill the county or they bill the individual that they respond to. It's a Forest Service, they bill the county. It's a property.
So is this proposal that we would establish this, not for us to use, we would charge us a fee, us being, I don't know who that is, but we would charge a fee for that service to help us move towards next gen GIS robot.
So I'm proposing setting this up. Really bad business. Issues about it. But it would be nice to be paid for it, but I think it's something that has to be done. We're kicking the can years down the road. At this point, Colorado will be lucky if it does spatial routing. My guess is that if you don't implement something like this, you're going to listen.
So my concern then is it's not just making this available somewhere, but somebody also has to be looking at the data coming in and saying, whoa, this is all screwed up, go back, go, $100.
We want to set it up so that we have contacts, and I actually have all the email contacts that I can fill out a spreadsheet. That when if DEFCON goes to Denver, it'll send an email, hey, DEFCON wants to annex this area. They would have to come in and say yes, no, whatever. All of that's tracked so that you have that history. So that you way of tracking how the boundaries between what they are and the whole people's accountable.
So would it be your vision that, okay, so we're doing that, and there's a change, and we would download a shape file and send it to Prados of the world or whatever to make sure that routing is, that their shape files are updated correctly so that they're routed?
I would see long term, this is something that is going to be by through a organization similar to the North Central region or the West region. Maybe something that sits state level over the top of that, where all those regions submit up into this main database, and then Intrado can pull that data. But when you submit your data through the spatial interface, your boundary should be similar to this. This is just a way to talk to each other. When we make your data submission, it should, as long as boundary, it should already be good to go.
My recommendation, I thought we would go to state OIT, introduce you, urge them to hire you. We'll probably have to do an RFP process.
So,
I know they're already trying to gather that.
So, be nice. I have clients that say royalties involved.
So where we, and the reason why, so we have today's presentation is GIS related. The next one in January will also be GIS related. And the reason why I'm doing that is because, like Tom said, if we don't get started at least thinking about how to approach this now, it's going to be years before we put something in place. I think there is still a lot of, I think we're in the early stages of the discussion yet. I like the collaborative approach of this tool where it allows all the users to go in and basically through negotiation determine where their correct boundaries are. One thing I'd like to do for a future meeting is find out, because CenturyLink is our 911 system service provider and they use Intrado for geospatial routing, where they have geospatial routings, maybe Intrado. I've seen a demo of their tool before. Yeah, I don't know how much it costs, but I don't know if they were providing geospatial routing, if that would be part of the cost of providing the geospatial routing, so that would be something to discuss with them. And see how that compares to this in terms of the ability of the agencies to actually go in and adjust their own boundaries. But we are going to need some sort of collaborative tool like this, even if it's not this, for everyone to go in and be able to determine where those boundaries are for the purpose of routing. And I wish more people would stay, because this is kind of an important topic.
Well, and it needs to be at the state level, but it's not OIT.
Well, OIT started years ago, like 3 or 4 years ago, collecting data from the counties. They still have huge gaps.
The counties that don't have
Yeah.
GIS data.
But they have gotten all in the same format.
And the problem with the way they're doing it too is what Tom was saying earlier. If, let's say a county says, well, my PSAP boundary actually extends over into my neighboring county by this much. So they send that updated shapefile to OIT. OIT then has to turn around and contact the other county and say, here's a shapefile that we got from your neighbor, do you agree with it? So there's no low friction way of working out those disagreements.
And again, that's,
Yeah, and they have to turn over.
those are political.
Well, they've started collecting PSAP boundaries at my request, but I don't think they've got very many of them.
I've heard less than
How are they asking for it?
I think in their regular data requests from the county GIS departments.
Let's see my county GIS department.
Exactly.
Exactly.
But that's another thing that probably needs to start up discussion. And I will be horrendously honest here, is that GIS as an industry has been awful about data quality. Awful. They don't understand. I'm actually kind of a photographer. I refer to some of the stuff we do at as paragraphic fiction. One of the rules for addressing is never to do address. You have to explain that to all GIS files. That this is important for CAD. They need to know that Miss March, who has lived in the same house for the last 90 years, and every time she calls the dispatch center, is a slightly different variation of some address. I have 6 aliases now.
Right.
She mixes up different numbers with different road names because they put a subdivision in, and she's off of Holland, she's off of Colorado, and
Well,
it happens all the time.
Did they go a whole readdressing process that had no duplicates? The numbers are the same.
So what we do is we retire an address. The road center lines are updated, but if you type in that address, 37 Holland, which is supposed to be 37 Colorado, it will pop up because it's an exact match. It's not ranging off the roads. So that's why it's an alias, is what it is. Building's also running off of an extremely ancient CAD system. It runs off of Foxborough.
So I have 1 or 2 PSAPs that don't have that.
But I think having those discussions, because my experience is that having access to a PSAP's data is the best quality control for transit. The first responders will tell you immediately when you're wrong.
Yeah. Very true.
Sometimes they're wrong.
Yeah.
But they won't tell you that.
No. Yeah. But I found that the improved data. And they also tell you when somebody's name is a price of it. And postal service incentive. So, if this is interesting to you guys, we can flesh this out a little more.
But the point is, who's responsible for this stuff? If it can't be OIT, then statewide overview.
Well, I think you may get,
Right now, it's on our servers, but I know North Central Region GIS subcommittee every week, and I can talk to Joel and Greg, Joel Hanson and Greg Mockman, about potentially putting on their system. I mean, there's no reason, just a data set. What's running is code.
If they already have server space and the capacity to house this.
We do actually host another service for the state.
Again, do the Colorado All Hazard Region have some kind of umbrella organization or representatives involved in the meet, or are they just distinct?
It's all run by.
Yes.
Which is part of the.
I have a link.
Those guys. Well, one person. I don't trust.
you were best friends.
We are recording this.
I said stuff in meetings to him before, so that's not okay.
Oh. So we run this, got it correct. It was originally funded by Urban Drainage Flood Control District. And what this does is it tracks all the new detention facilities throughout the state of Colorado, so that each of the water stakeholders can be notified on whether the water is. And it's a legislative mandate that was unfunded several years ago. So, yeah. And so I can come in. And Burning Gardens filing number 6 was filed by Henry Hollander. And anticipation date. What's going on? You're a water engineer and know what it means. I don't. There's
So you drill down and find the documentation.
right. So
Certainly it's something that makes sense in the resource.
Well,
the hosting is the problem.
Yeah.
But it can sit on our servers.
Coordinate is
Yeah.
more, but the hosting is the issue.
Making sure the contacts are in there, so
Right.
if you try to change a boundary somewhere, the emails are going to the right people.
Yes.
For approval.
And we could host that on our servers. Wrap it in. Totally fine.
I just feel like there's so many connections with the resource centers. I mean, truly what we do, so.
It really is.
It really is,
The
so.
problem will be if we don't get more funding for the resources.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
But that's it.
Well, let's look at,
There's that.
you said you're meeting with North Central Region.
Well, they're meeting next week.
Next week.
Talk.
Yeah, I think, talk to them for now, because, I mean, then it's on a server by, maintained by people who know what they're doing with this type of software. No, I don't mean you, I mean,
He's referring to us.
as opposed to the resource center. I love Monica, but she's not a GIS
They're
person.
not, and the hosting part of this is not what I'm talking about. It's really about coordination and teaching.
Right.
Letting everybody know about this tool, and here's what the plans
Yes.
are, and that sort of thing. The mouthpiece.
That wasn't the hit on you.
But what you could do with this is that you do those annual surveys, right? The reason you couldn't build that, this, that they're not only filling out, they're not also fair. Because I haven't had time to do it yet. There's a way for them to collect that information. You guys can go in and pull out all that back end, Excel spreadsheet, shape files, and what.
So we also see the data traffic comments, say, this is bad, it came from me, this is good.
Well, but this wouldn't be a part of that. about the wrong format and that sort of thing. This is what it is, and this is only a tool to say, hey, Vicki, I want a little bit of this Jefferson County stuff because we understand that.
You don't upload new files,
It's not
you just go in and make adjustments to the existing.
And then you download the new file, that either add on or remove from the property, so you go to hit your other data layers and say, okay, I just drop off. A city annexes a part of the county. Your problem, but if you, the problem with Arapahoe, that affects that city PSAP and the county PSAP because somebody has to add that data on to theirs, and remove it from theirs, being able to pull down that boundary and say, okay, this is where the changes are, I need to add this data.
Instead of recalling you and saying,
Yeah.
we think this belongs to us, and kind of trying to describe the area we're talking about. This is the vision.
Just off the top of my head, I think I would want to upload my shape file so that I'm working from my current understanding and not this topologically correct. Not,
You can't. I can show you online because I have a sample shapefile to do that with. I just.
right,
That was all the problem.
I'm just saying,
But who's gonna do
that somebody would have to look at that and say, okay, your datum's correct, it's all output correctly.
Oh, I would expect you to give it to me in WGSA form. And all I do is I look at the projection and it's the well-known ID 4326. If it equals that, I accept it. If it isn't, then I say, please convert this to.
Right, you use it as a specification.
Yeah. And that specification is the exact same specification that you would have to convert through your spatial interface as you upload DCR.
So the initial build would be big, right? That's the thing about the initial.
And there's some concepts that don't have it.
Yeah.
NIS shape file.
Sure.
Well, so if you wanted to take over all of those search engines. Jim Anderson wanted to serve the whole southeastern corner of the state.
Well, and it's not that, I mean, it's not that, I can literally remember less than a decade ago, we were trying to build evergreens and stuff. And they literally had somebody out there with a GPS device capturing coordinates so they could build their map because they had nothing.
We started with fire trucks driving down the center line.
Right.
Capturing.
And I mean, that's an evergreen, that's not in a poor area that doesn't have a lot of funding and infrastructure like some of these Benton County or something like that where.
Or an interest in society.
Right.
Or you have problems that they're losing 75% of this. So they're gonna probably lose.
Well, when Sheriff said, I want 911, let's county, because he said, everybody knows my number. I don't need them. I know where everybody lives.
We're more or less past those days, but. Yeah, so, no, thank you, Tom. I think this is an important discussion that we started having, and I think that we've got a lot more to discuss. And as far as this particular tool, I would like to continue having discussions with you about it.
See what we can flesh out
Yeah.
for the next meeting. I mean, it's kind of a back burner project for us.
Well, since nobody's paying to do it.
Right.
But there are components to this that we reuse for other clients.
Daryl Sawatch SO is, they're only a dispatch center, they're secondary, San Luis Valley.
Yeah, they're part of some of these.
The part of my concern is that there may be requirements that if we take on this sort of thing, we have to issue a lot. They will use this. And not free. Well, I don't know, there's a reasonable for it to be free.
Why does everything have to?
Well, he's offering it for free, I'm not willing to beg to pay.
Well, there's not really right now a way to pay.
Funding source.
Right, and I wouldn't expect to see the funding source for what, 6-9 months at the earliest?
If that legislation passed.
Well, and the other part is, we're not paying, with the new ESNet, we're not paying for geospatial route. So we can't use this right now. What we can do is work on it now to get it as accurate as possible. But again, like I said, there's a possibility that we may not even be able to use this for geospatial routing, depending on who we're using as the vendor. If it's Entrada, they may say, well, we're not going to use that. We have our own tool. We have our own servers. So,
And if you're not paying for it, the question of who is, there are issues that come from not having. You know, we go, this is public right now, you go with it.
So technically, our company owns the data. You know, my business partner and I are billionaires with the.
No, I know, I'm serving.
There are moral
I
responsibilities.
make a lot more money serving carriers.
I just know from our clientele, this is something they need the help from jurisdictions that have the tax base, that can afford to implement the standards. They can follow the standards. There are resources out there through the all hazard regions. I think you start opening your discussion saying, hey, let's just update the schema so that all these counties are starting to submit into that. And then start talking to the other regions that may not have that data collection and say, well, would you like to join us? Because that makes, when they go for their FEMA grants each year, if they say, we're not just North Central now, we're covering half the state, they can get more funding for that. Apply that also with potentially down the road tariff money at a state level. The structure's there.
Let's catch them. Thank you very much. Make safer works towards this before we need it, rather than cover it. Everything else in place and say, oh, we don't have this, let's go ahead and fortune again.
It's like the call I got yesterday. A project I was working on 2 years ago to migrate client servers. They stopped and they need it done now before the end of the month.